Hello, and thank you for attending the 2020 Observer USG Candidates Debate. This will be our first time doing a debate over Zoom. Now that the university is facing an uncertain future because of both COVID-19 and President Barbara Snyder leaving, the student voice is more important than ever. So these elections are tremendously important, and I encourage all students to get involved. So we're going to talk to every position, both ones that are people running unopposed and ones where there's a race. And each candidate will first start off with a 1 to 2 minute long opening statement. First, the presidential candidates, Joey Cass and Hunter Seckel. Joey, you could start.
Hi, Matt. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Joey Cass, your candidate for president. In my time at Case Western Reserve University, I've grown attached to this campus in a unique way as a transfer student. Involving myself in the undergraduate student government here has provided me with the opportunities to not only build relationships with and work alongside other passionately involved students, but help me to better connect myself with the student body. I currently serve as your Chief Judicial Officer, as well as the chair of the Allocations Committee. My time spent in USG has been filled with incredibly valuable experiences. I have listened to concerns from undergraduate students and learned how to effectively advocate for them in order to improve their crew experience. Crew's campus has certainly grown, both physically and virtually, this past year, and there are still aspects that I wish to improve upon as president. As your president, I will work tirelessly serving the students and leading USG through my platform of responsibility, community, accountability, and productivity. I believe in achieving several goals of this office: meaningfully connecting the student body to and inform them of their democratic student government and university administration, and better promote the work, passions, and efforts of our students and their organizations. The very nature of our democracy relies on an educated voting population, and as president, I find it to be my personal responsibility to ensure that those needs are met. To detail, rebuilding our community as we return to campus after being separated from this pandemic will be a priority of mine in the beginning months of the year. I will then work to continue a legacy of outreach and representation by empowering and elevating our organizations and our partners like UDC and RHA to accomplish our goals and set new, higher ones. My mission as president, simply, is to put students first and work toward a better crew experience for everyone.
Great, thank you for that. Hunter?
Yeah, thank you very much for hosting this debate. And really quickly, before I start, just one thing, wanted to take a quick moment to thank Joey. So as some of you may know, we are thankfully more colleagues, partners, and friends than we are opponents, and it's a privilege to share this Zoom stage, if not a physical stage, with him. So we currently find ourselves in the midst of a situation that just a few months ago, nobody would have fathomed. If anything, this has taught us now more than ever that it's difficult to tell what the future has to hold. Joey and I can both tell you, as the two in charge of the Student Activities Fee Emergency Fund, that the only thing that's certain, right now at least, is uncertainty. I've now had 3 years of experience in USG. I've served as a representative, a treasurer, and now vice president of finance. There are visions that I believe will truly address some of the issues that we've been dealing with for years. But for this opening statement, I want to hit on a few key points as to how together we will address the issues that come our way in a STECO administration. Because as this year has taught us, we will never know exactly what the future has to hold. First and foremost, we will address problems with humility. That means coming to you for feedback via Zoom and other convenient means, and not just expecting you to come to us. That means working with our partners in UDC, RHA, and UPB to achieve your goals, like new housing and dining options. We'll work efficiently, making sure that the cooperation on the emergency fund that we've been able to build this semester, which is not just Joey and I's cooperation, but also cooperation with other campus organizations, does not fade, and making sure that those procedures are put in place so that we can efficiently help students in the future. Openness, listening to your suggestions, making sure that we are present for you and there all the time. Communication, pushing the administration of this university to communicate clearly with us, but also making sure that we're publicizing what we are doing and communicating clearly with others via brief communications that we can send out. And most importantly, whatever the future holds, we'll do it all together. Thank you.
All right, thank you both for that statement. So now, as you both mentioned, you're both involved in creating the USG Emergency Fund to deal with COVID-19. Hunter, in your letter of intent, you proposed creating a permanent fund to deal with future crises. Why do you think a permanent fund is necessary? And Joey, what is your opinion on the idea of a permanent emergency fund?
Yeah, so let me be clear about that. When I said a permanent emergency fund, I didn't mean keeping the money aside permanently. I actually don't think that that's a practical idea. My view is that the actual structure of the fund should be made permanent. So what I mean by that is, for example, when this semester came up, and I'll try to make this brief, we were able to collect money from different organizations based out of their budgets and things of that variety, and they were able to donate that to us. I was kind of more on the logistics side. Joey was kind of more on the fundraising side, so he really did a lot of that work. So that, I think, needs to be made permanent. The structure to be able to do that very quickly and efficiently again, and put this into place without having to do all of the startup work that we had to deal with in the beginning. I don't think that it would be a good idea to keep that money set aside, because I think that that money that comes from the student activities fee, I'm the vice president of finance for USG. This is like a big thing for me. The money that comes from this semester's students needs to be for the benefit of those students. And that's really at the heart of why we're doing what we're doing now, is because this money was not going to be for the benefit of this semester's students otherwise, but now it is.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Joey, is there anything you'd like to comment based on that?
I just would say that the reasons why I completely agree with Hunter, that the money can't exist there, frankly, because it can't. USG can't afford to give money to an emergency fund. Simply is not in their budget. UPB can't afford it as well. CUC can't afford it. There isn't enough money in the student activities fee for the students' activities. And I can tell you that confidently as the chair of the allocations committee, auditing all of those boards for the past 3 years. However, I would agree with Hunter that the framework that we set up so quickly with the tremendous amount of help that we had is hard to come by, and that by destroying all of that or essentially neglecting it would be a loss to the entire community. And so I'm absolutely in favor of keeping this framework, the setup in place, although there needs to be some sort of legislative action that would allow us to then put money into it should another emergency happen.
So create the precedent then for USG to put money into a similar emergency fund if something else were to happen in the future, but not having like a specific rainy day fund as a permanent part of the budget.
Correct.
Okay, great. Now, another issue with COVID-19, of course, has been what many students consider the university's lack of transparency, especially when it came to moving belonging out of students' dorms. So how do you plan on amplifying the student voice in future situations like this, and having the administration go to you first instead of you having to go to the administration when they are making these decisions? Joey, if you want to go first.
Okay, yeah, sure. I was like, okay. So to address the first question, I think a tremendous shift that we've seen in USG this past year has been in the volume of outreach. USG has sent out many more surveys than it has in the past, and that's certainly something I would want to continue. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback that students like the ease of filling out these online surveys, and I have to commend our current vice president of PR for doing a fantastic job with that and working with the executive committee. To continue that, I would also, like Hunter had mentioned in his opening statement, the opportunity that Zoom provides for our students. I've always thought it very impractical to walk from the top of the hill to Tink to meet with a USG officer in the USG office, or from Northside to Adelbert Hall to go to a General Assembly meeting. And I feel that in order to improve that student's voice to the administration, we first have to be more accessible ourselves. And if the administration is able to see how easily accessible they are, they in turn behave similarly. What you've seen now with these recent communications from President Snyder and the more broad university updates, not necessarily like specific this issue update, but I'm talking the video, for example, that all came from this resolution that I helped author that's going through the Student President's Roundtable, calling for administration to communicate with students. And as a matter of fact, the staff advisors that participate in these committees were able to here are the points being brought up in that resolution, and we're able to address it even before the resolution was passed. And that's when we started to see the administration becoming so much more involved. And so it's a matter of making our voices heard, but also providing a voice for the students.
All right, Hunter?
Yeah, yes, please. So I would definitely agree with Joey on the issue of utilizing Zoom and all of those ways to make us more accessible. As Joey said, that was something that I wrote in my letter of intent. I think that we definitely need to use those tools. And I do think that being more accessible to the student body and having the weight of the student body's voice behind us is something that's key and critical to making sure the administration takes us seriously. Kind of on kind of the nature of the question. I think that, if I'm being completely honest, I think that the administration is going to always have this tendency to think that they're making decisions with our interests in mind when that's not really necessarily the case. So I think really what we have to do is, so just a few days ago, myself and all of the fellow vice presidents, Sophie, Alex, Jasmine, Bids, and Marin, and myself were all on a call with Dick Jameson, with Lou Stark. Those individuals are vice presidents of the university who were key for a lot of these different things. And we communicated directly to them that we thought that the way they were doing things was not correct. And the way that they were communicating with the student body was not correct. And we told them what we wanted to see. And quite frankly, as much as I would like to say that we're going to be able to convince the administration to always come to us first, I do think that at times we're going to have to take the step of making sure that they know that we are dissatisfied with their communication when they are, because at the end of the day, this is a crisis. We're all going through a lot, and it might not always be the first thing in the admin's mind to come and consult us on a decision that in their minds they're thinking that they have to make. So I think really being proactive and going toward them as representatives, I think that is kind of our job and our role, is to make sure that we're saying to them, hey, we didn't really like what you were doing here. And I think that that's going to be the practical way to make sure that they communicate with us in the future.
All right, great. Now, aside from COVID-19, the other major change occurring on campus is the departure of President Barbara Snyder. What qualities do you think the university should look for in a new president, and how would you establish a relationship with this new president? Hunter, if you could go first.
Yeah, of course. So I think that there are a number of things that I would like to see in a new president. Probably first and foremost, I think that the new president of the university has to have that sense of humility. I think that we've seen, quite frankly, a little bit lacking in President Snyder. It's not very often that you see President Snyder amongst the students, interacting with the students. She very often kind of stays in Adelbert, and very rarely, when she comes to USG, it's like she's a regal presence almost. And I think that there are definitely benefits to that. I mean, she's taken very seriously and things of that nature. But I think that at this point in our university's history, we need to thank President Snyder for all that she's done, because she brought this university through a very, very rough time. And at the same time, I think that we can learn and say, all right, maybe someone who's a little bit more willing to interact with the students is something that we want to hear. I think also someone who is willing to listen, and in my opinion, comes from and this is not unique to, because President Snyder currently does, but I think we need someone who comes from a background that's going to help continue to break the STEM school kind of idea as to what CASE is. I think that we need somebody who is going to come and bring a prioritization of making sure that all of our humanities and that side of Euclid, because there's a very real barrier there, that side of Euclid feels valued in fundraising efforts and prioritization of funds and everything of that nature. I think that those are some of the key qualities, and I would add a list more, but I will stop.
All right, Joey.
Yeah, I would agree on all of those points. I think something important to note: when President Snyder arrived at our university, our acceptance rate was up at 70%. We were much, much more in debt than we were now. And the term I like to use, Matthew, is she was a wartime president. We brought President Barbara Snyder in as our wartime president while we were in war. The war is over. We can't have a wartime president anymore. This next president needs to be our peacetime president. They need to have a presence on campus. They need to be seen by the students. They need to be a part of our community in Cleveland. Hunter, you mentioned she's in Adelbert a lot. Sometimes a lot she's not even in Adelbert because she's not in Cleveland. Yeah. And I think we're at a really crucial point in our university's history where something like that can be so profoundly impactful on the next 10 years of Case Western Reserve. In terms of my relationship with the president of the university and USG's, I think quickly establishing a very efficient relationship has to be a priority. Because of what we've seen with all of these uncertainties and all this chaos, particularly in a pandemic, is that the USG's ability to connect with administrators to help students is one of its most powerful assets. And as the president, I would certainly make it a priority to establish a working relationship, not only with myself, but with all the vice presidents and the executive committee, so that we together can lead USG in a direction with the university president. Meeting with the president every month, I don't want to be just a regular routine thing where pleasantries are exchanged and nothing's accomplished. I want to go in with an agenda. I want to have bullet points of concerns of students, and I want to start and continue dialogue with this new president to meet the needs of the students that they present to their student government.
Are we allowed to, am I able to add to that and respond to that also?
Yes, you can.
Okay. And so, yeah, and I would additionally agree with all of those points. And I think that and another thing that we need to do is that very often historically, because of the fact that the president has very little time, I think this is just kind of the way I work. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a big food guy. I like cooking, I like baking, I like eating. It's the Italian.
You make a good steak.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's the Italian in me. But I think that a roundtable meal with the president, so that we all have our guards down, is something that we need to do right from the beginning. Not just me, all of the exec. And the other thing that I think that's very important is that Joey kind of hit on this. I think that we need to be making sure that especially for those first few meetings, that the only person who's having communication with the president is not me or Joey. I think we need to be making sure that we are hosting office hours specifically geared toward garnering student feedback to bring directly to the president. Very often, the concerns that are brought to the president are just internally gathered via USG. I think we need to have explicit office hours or explicit Zoom sessions or explicit forms, whatever the case may be, to submit agenda items for that meeting, so that it's not just USG that gets a voice as to what we're going to say to this new president.
So to follow up, Hunter, on what you mentioned about barrier between STEM and humanities, one thing that a lot of humanities programs in particular, but I'm sure that STEM programs are thinking of doing this as well, is creating new concentrations and majors. So for example, the history department is doing that next studies major. I know the English department is trying to, a journalism minor has been in the works for at least as long as I've been here.
Yeah.
So what do you think USG, and this is for you too, Joey, what do you both think USG's role is in assisting departments and students in creating these new concentrations and also hiring tenure track faculty for these positions?
Should I start or do you?
I had Joey start last time, so on.
Okay. So I actually serve, believe it or not, I currently serve on the Faculty Senate Committee for the Undergraduate Experiences Curriculum Committee, which, for those of you who don't know, actually approves all of the majors, the new majors for the university. So we just did the neurosciences major. This is public knowledge, but there will be a neurosciences major starting next year. We just approved it. So I think that, in my opinion, I think that considering that a member of USG or a student leader that is affiliated with USG sits on that committee, at least one, sometimes two, sit on that committee every year, I do think that we should be an active part in making those proposals. For example, now that I've been on this committee, and Manav Midha, who's one of the members of the finance committee, serves with me on the curriculum committee, and then I serve with Vidisha on the faculty senate committee on the undergraduate experience, which is called FISCU proper. I think that we should, I know what the faculty who approve these things, and luckily I get a vote also, I know what they're looking for, and whoever is serving on that committee knows what they're looking for. So I think that we should play an active part in that. The other thing that I think is key is, and this is something that I've been working on for a long time, I think that we need to redo how the university allocates its funding so that we can expand some of these programs. So for example, right now, as it stands, if you have a course and it's cross-listed in mathematics and, let's say, electrical engineering, the one that comes to mind is discrete math. A course that's cross-listed in 2 departments, that tuition is evenly split, regardless as to whether a math or an electrical engineering professor is actually teaching the course. And I think that's why we have a lot of problems on the humanities sides of things too, because the way the money flows is not consistent with who's actually teaching the course. So I think that if we have some of those funding issues if we start acting like one university in terms of the way we fund things, instead of acting as 2 separate institutions with different departments that are competing with one another, I think that we can help not only tell students and student leaders what they need to be putting into a major, but also all of the other things that are structural that are going to prevent them from actually getting that proposal passed in the first place, like cross-listing courses, for this example. So I think that USG should play a huge role. However, I will put an asterisk there, if the student who's making the proposal wants us to be part of it. Because what I don't think that USG should do is I don't think that USG should become involved in things that students do not want us involved in. I think that we should always be working to support rather than to dictate.
All right, Joey, if you'd like to respond.
Yeah, so I feel like this all begins in a place like where Hunter ended with feedback. We need to understand exactly what the student body desires in terms of these new majors and new programs. As for the new majors and new programs in principle, I'm all for them. I've always been a strong advocate that the biggest area of improvement that we can see in our university is in the humanities and the social sciences. And ironically enough, when we're talking about metrics and top lists, et cetera, if you see improvements in those, that's where you're going to see our climb. It's like the only difference between us and these other large universities, our STEM is essentially on par. Our research is top notch. It's these humanities and social sciences where we need so much more improvement to make us more equal to what the institutions we're often compared toward. In terms of how we're going to go about doing this, I think Hunter revealed to everyone probably the largest unknown problem in our university, and that it's decentralized. So when Case was in financial hardship, it decentralized a lot of its capacity as a university. And because of that, you have individual colleges running their own ledgers. You have our access services, housing, dining, one-to-one fitness running its own ledger. You have Tinkham-Veal University Center running its own ledger against Twing. So nobody's working together, Matthew. How are we supposed to progress as a university when everyone's working for themselves? It can't work like that. And it's something I've had to try to fight time and time again as the chair of the allocations committee in terms of all the services that students have to pay. Like, how wrong is it that if you want to do something in the spot, you also have to pay $100 an hour just to use it? It's like, I already paid $60,000 to go here. And now now I have to, like when Alex does the Sparty at the beginning of the year, USG has to pay just to use the facility. So it's how much money students have to pay. And it's also affecting what students get from the money they have to pay. The limited courses that we're having in our social sciences and our humanities. And it's this decentralized model that helped us for the short term, but we're now seeing is really, really hurting us in the long term. And the good news is, there is good news. The good news is we have a new provost, relatively new, and we're getting a new president. And Re-centralizing the university was one of the main reasons why 2 presidents before President Snyder was removed by the Faculty Senate, because it was too soon, too fast, and too much momentum going all at once. This process will most likely start and slowly, but continue to re-centralize our university. And I hope, as USG president, I can work with administration to pursue that. I can work with the Vice President of Academic Affairs on the Faculty Senate by providing that student voice. Like I said, those monthly meetings with the president are going to be so, so crucial to provide much more information than one individual can have. It's about the Vice President of Academic Affairs. It's about the USG Executive Committee. It's about our data from PR. There's so many factors that we need to gather together. And I'm confident we can, because the current government did a fantastic job with the over 2,200 submissions we got from the UDC USG survey. I'm looking at you, Hunter.
Thank you. But it's not just me, but thank you.
But I mean, if anything that this pandemic has proved to me is like the ability and capacity of Case Western Reserve University students. Like it's unbelievable how much work we're able to accomplish in such trying times, to be frank, that I as president, I want to lead USG to continue that kind of work, to pursue these kinds of transformative initiatives like re-centralizing our university and building up our humanities and social science programs.
All right, great. I only have one more question and then closing statements and open up to the floor. So last question, I think it's important to address this elephant in the room. We don't actually know when classes are going to be back on campus. There's the chance that online-only education may continue in the fall. How have you both considered how this possibility will impact your responsibilities? And if it does happen, how you try to improve the student experience if it's just Zoom, and what parts of your platform do you think are still applicable to that online-only fall semester?
Who's starting on this one?
Joey.
Well, that question made me sad. I think it made everyone in the room sad. I think I saw a tweet recently where it's like, I'm not even going to entertain talk about not returning to the fall because it makes me so upset. And it's true. I'm from South Florida. I miss Cleveland. I never think I'd ever say that. However, if we're not on campus, the student government still has to serve the students. And that, again, is the priority, students first. Now, how we're going to accomplish that will look different remotely. It'll look similar to now, although we'll have to continually make improvements upon that. Tenets of my platform that would remain the same, I have to go to community. And I feel like that's something that's been even lacking this semester is community. I mean, it sounds cheesy to say it out loud, but it's like, when I go to Case, and especially now that we're remote, it's like we need that Spartan pride back. We need that sense of community that we all still go to Case Western Reserve University back, not just a little Zoom code and you log on and you see your professor and then you log off. There has to be some sort of community built back up. Now, I've seen other universities build virtual student unions. Now, we can talk all day about how we want an actual student union, but in terms of being off campus, a virtual student union is something that I certainly want to pursue. Upholding the longstanding traditions. When I was president of the Upper Class Community Council and the Residence Hall Association, that was one of our biggest charges, was upholding all the traditions of UC that we had to continually serve with for all the residents. And I think as USG, we have to work with the organizations that already exist in our university, that already have framework in place for putting on these sorts of traditions, and working with them to deliver that to all of the students. Now, Hunter and I have both been running this emergency fund with our respective committees, the Allocations Committee and USG Finance Committee, and the VP Emeritus, she's here somewhere. Shout out to Sid. And that emergency fund has helped a lot of students with the issues that they've had to run into financially because of the university's response to this crisis. Now, the existence of, like we said, both Hunter and I agree on that we shouldn't have a perpetual emergency fund. However, there needs to be some sort of action taken in regards to the student activities fee, which is a part of not our tuition, but of our cost of attendance. And in speaking of costs, I feel that it would be very interesting for us to first get feedback from the student body and evaluate it both quantitatively and qualitatively as to where our prices are going to work, because $60,000 in Cleveland is very different than $60,000 here in Florida, which I think we can all agree from wherever we're respectively from. I'm also very concerned, Matt, even if we do return in the fall, there are a lot of students who are abroad that are going to have a lot of trouble getting visas to get back to Case. And that's why the provost has already directed faculty to make hybrid courses, both online and in person, for students that may not be able to get back. And so I think it's essential as a role of a student government to provide the resources in the community for those students who aren't able to return, should we be able to in the fall. Fingers crossed, everyone.
All right, Hunter?
Yeah, so basically at the crux of my platform is that we're all doing this together, that this is not necessarily a top-down administration. This is all of us working together. And for that reason, my platform basically would remain unchanged. So, and what I mean by that is this. From the perspective of humility, we still need to work on bringing USG to the students. That's something that we've gotten better at recently, but we still need to work on that. We still need to work with engaging with the Cleveland community. So for example, the whole reason why students are being moved out of their dorms in the current time is so that members of the Cleveland community who would be infected with coronavirus can come to live in our on-campus housing. Now, that was a very hard thing to milk out of the administration. They were not very clear with that as the actual purpose of what they were doing. But I think it's a very good thing that we're working with the Cleveland community, as long as it does not come at our own expense. It doesn't come at the students' expense. I think that the students would be more than willing to have a little bit of inconvenience if it helps others. I think that the student body is very generous with their time, talent, and resources. But I do think that when it gets to a point that somebody is entering your private abode without any sort of a forewarning, I think that gets to be a little bit of an issue. Strengthening relationships with other student organizations, that needs to keep going. That's really something that we have found during this time has been one of the strongest collaborations between the collaboration that Joey, the aforementioned collaboration that USG and UDC has been undergoing to collate all of these survey results. For context, Badisha and I will be going to tomorrow to Fiskview to talk about the new grading proposal. And collaborating with UDC made that possible. Collaborating with RHA on dining options this whole semester. That's something that really wasn't something that needed to be improved. It was something that needed to be improved, and we were there. You know, all of these different things, they will continue. Making the emergency fund protocols permanent, that's even gonna be more important. And now onto the last part. The thing that I think that you asked that I think is key and critical, and something that I know I've devoted a lot of my time to, is building that relationship. How do we know that we're one? So when this all started, when the emergency fund was basically just people emailing me and me using my USG credit card to buy things, when that was all that the emergency fund was, I actually had a student email me, and obviously I'm not going to reveal a name for this story, but that student was a Case student who was trapped in Bogota, Colombia, whose belongings were left in her dorm room, who was not going to be able to get back to Case. And myself, some of the administration, a few other student leaders, Marin, who's the current president, we were making sure that we were communicating with her on a near daily basis. And I wish that I say that we could have done more for her. We couldn't end up really doing that much with all of everything that's going on. We were able to get her some resources, but you know, times are hard for all of us. And I think that that's part of it. I think that making sure that even the least of us, and especially the least of us, are taken care of is going to be a key part of making sure that we are together as community. Of me taking my time, Joey taking his time, Sonia taking her time, all of us working together, taking our time, Jasmine, Alex, Navina, we've all been working hard on this, Sharan, everyone, to take our time and devote, and especially, and Joey goes without saying, to take our time to devote to other people. That's what community is. That is devoting our time and talents to other people. That's what community is. And the other thing is, I'm vice president of finance. We've got 200 clubs. If you want to talk about something that brings people together, it's our clubs and organizations. So I sent out an email the other day to all the club leaders telling them, prepare for a virtual student activities fair. What we're not going to do is we are not going to sacrifice some of the key things that bring people together to this virus. And if we can do those things in a different format, then I think that we're gonna build that crew community now more than ever. I think that one of the things, Matthew, I think that one of the key things is that because we're always so close to one another, sometimes we have the illusion that we're actually connecting. And I think now that we're all apart, it actually kind of gives us a new perspective that those relationships that we always took for granted while in person are all the more important now. And so I think that between clubs, between organizations, between connecting on that individual level, that's what's going to get us the community that we so are missing.
Great. Thank you so much for that answer. Now, I want to open up to the floor for questions. I know, Vidisha, you raised your hand in the Zoom chat. Would you like to go first? And I know Steph also sent me a message. So
my hand raising was actually an accident. I'm sorry about that.
Oh.
You were stretching.
So, all right, here's one question from Avi. At George Washington University, student government leaders have taken an active role in one of their students' fossil fuel divestment campaign by showing up to protests and lending support by way of their platform. How would you specifically use your platform to make sure the university administration is following through on and developing an adequate climate action plan, in addition to making sure the university's investments reflect its core values? Thank you for that question, Avi. So, Joey, if you want to go first.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Avi. Glad you could come. To speak to that, I actually met with Rich, who's the head of the Student Sustainability Council, which is an ad hoc committee within USG. And we had actually a very good conversation about essentially the same question. And where the answer begins is evaluating first of all, what we're going to have to deal with, and then we can figure out how we can accomplish that exact goal. Now, understanding that our university's investments are different than George Washington's, is that first of all, we have a new chief investment officer, and he's been very open to listening to students, much more so than the previous, which is good news for all of us. But furthermore, a lot of the university's investments actually rely in large fund accounts that we don't actually have the specific. So to explain it, we don't own a stock of ExxonMobil that we can just sell. We own a stock of a large fund that contains stocks of different fossil fuels companies. Now, divesting from those is certainly a lot more complicated, but not entirely impossible. Where that goes is, first of all, divesting, and then that's liquidating assets. What are we going to do with the cash? And the conversation that Rich and I had would actually be, it'd even be more interesting to not only call for that divestment, but call for investment in renewable resources and renewable energy companies. And so in terms of looking at our financial future, which for no one is bright right now, I'll be very frank, the stock market, our endowment is really hurting because of the stock market currently. However, I think it'd be interesting to look at reinvesting those in renewable energy companies, as well as Cleveland municipal bonds. I think we always talk about giving back to the community. There's no more stable investment, and there's no more better way to give back to a community than building bridges and roads with municipal bonds. And so the technicalities of which students are not usually involved in. However, I do think it'd be appropriate for the executive committee of USG, the president of USG, to meet with the president, the CFO, the CIO, whomever may be appropriate at the particular time, to talk about this sort of initiative. And just speaking as the chief judicial officer, in my experience with legislation in our student government, I think a really powerful, well-cited resolution would go very far. Now, I'm talking about lots of statistics, lots of data, and then ultimately ending with the exact question that you posed, Avi. I always admire the power that the student body is able to have behind resolutions where we have a lot of momentum and a lot of participation from. And I want it something that will last the 4 years that it currently is empowered to last, so that when it's renewed by its student government, they already have the resources available for them to either call for more divestment, or in the future that we both want to see, they won't have to anyway. I hope that answers your question.
Right.
I was on mute. Hunter? Yeah.
That's all right. Thank you very much, Matthew. Yeah, so hi, Avi. Avi is one of my students currently. So hello, Avi. So I'm a teaching assistant for ENGR 210. So a few different things about this particular question. I think that Joey did hit upon a key point right at the beginning that's important, is that the university typically does not invest in stocks. They invest in what are called ETFs, exchange traded funds. ETFs are big conglomerates. Now, those big conglomerates usually focus on a particular thing. So whether that be the energy industry or fossil fuel companies, whatever the case may be. So 2 things on that. I think, I'll be point blank, I think that it's the USG's job to enforce its resolutions. 4 years ago now, I believe it's 4 years ago, we passed a resolution saying that we were going to urge the university to divest from fossil fuels. I think that it's our job to continue to carry out that resolution, to continue to urge, to continue to meet with the chief investment officer until either that is satisfied, until we get to that point, or until that resolution no longer is in effect by the USG. Those are the only 2 things that we need, that we have at our, and that's, at the core of it, that's part of the reason why it's not explicitly in my platform, is because we passed a resolution on it. As far as I'm concerned, it's a question that the USG has already weighed in on, and we just need to follow that up with action now, including by cooperating with Sunrise, which is the group that Avi leads. So I think that one other thing that's important to note is that we have to make sure that we are showing that divesting from fossil fuels, and this I think is on the students, that divesting from fossil fuels isn't necessarily going to tank the endowment, and it won't necessarily. And the reason, and if anything, this last week, in which we've seen basically an oil trade war between Saudi Arabia and Russia, if anything, it shows that oil is not that great or stable of an investment in the first place, and fossil fuels more generally. So I think that that's something important to remember. I also do concur that we need to be investing in renewable energy. I mean, eventually, even if we kept all of our stock in oil, which I do not want, but even if we kept all of our stock in oil, eventually oil is going to run out. I mean, it's not a limitless supply. So eventually we're going, I'm an electrical engineer. That's kind of what we do. The whole thing that we do is we find new ways to generate and export energy. And there are issues with all of the renewables. Every single renewable has issues. But finding the companies that are investing in biofuels, that's one that's very exciting to me. Different nuclear options. Those are the ones that are going to take off once fossil fuels are no longer in the picture. So I think finding those companies, maybe some of them are unicorn companies, but finding those companies that exist currently and investing in them. And I also think that, I do think that a gradual approach is likely what the university will take. That's not something that I prefer, but at least working toward that goal and working toward the accomplishment of that resolution is something that I'm going to do. I'm not going to promise you that the university is going to divest based on my recommendation. That's not how really any of this works. But I promise you that I'm going to do all I possibly can to enforce our resolutions, lest USG not have any credibility at all.
Great, thank you so much, both of you. Now, I know there's one more student question from Steph before we go into that, I just want to make one last comment just based on those two things. So just kind of back up what both you guys are saying. So a Hopkins study recently actually showed that divesting from fossil fuels doesn't actually hurt your bottom line endowment, mainly because most funds don't beat an index anyway. So there's that. And also, yeah, USG, I think you mentioned or alluded to it, but USG did pass a bill asking for divestment from fossil fuels into about 6 years ago, and then it was blocked by administration. So it's also a question of how USG stuff turns into change. But anyway, Steph, your question.
Yeah, my question is specifically for Joey. I know that there's been some like bad standing with like past organization that you had been involved in, namely RHA. And I just had some questions about how you believe this, like how you've grown from this lapse of commitment, and like how you plan on working fairly with organizations in the future as USG president.
Would you be able to provide more specifics?
I believe you were voted out of RHA by your community council committee for not fulfilling your commitment.
Could they ask?
I'm really just like getting this from a text.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm just trying to read and speak.
No, you're good.
And I'm not very good at it. Yeah, can you just elaborate on kind of like what happened and like how you believe that you've grown from it and how like you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your question, Seth. So my tenure in RHA was I was president of the Upper Class Community Council for 1 year, which I served to full term. And then the following year, I was voted as the representative for the Stephanie Tubbs Jones Residence Hall, which is where I've lived the past 2 years. And so in my capacity as STJ rep, when the council was formed, the meetings were not at a time when I said I was able to commit to, and that I was still able to go to general body meetings. And given my history and experience with UCK, given my, actually I prepared all the transitioning documents for UCK as well, and its budget system that it used with the help of actually Manon Dunbar, who used to be the treasurer over in UDC. I understood that my voice and my role in UCK was not nearly as essential as it was in the general body. The general body, first of all, has a far greater budget than UCK, and the general body also votes on very, very sorts of different things than UCK. As a matter of fact, UCK typically doesn't really vote on anything, they just program. And like I mentioned earlier, they program a lot of very important traditions, but the good thing about traditions is that they're already established. There's already a framework for it. And so when I had to make that tough choice of should I completely resign from RHA because I can't go to the UCK meetings, or should I continue to serve STJ in the general body weekly, I chose the latter of the two. And that was something, I regret that I wasn't able to attend those meetings, but working with their vice president of programming, as well as their vice president of marketing, and the general body, I still feel that the missions that RHA stands for as a programming and partly advocacy body were still able to be met through the general body, and I'm very thankful that I was able to voice my experience with the organization in the general body for the time in which I was a part of the organization.
If I could say one brief thing, I don't really know anything about Joey's time in RHA, but I do know about his time working on the emergency fund. And I know that during that time that he's worked all hours of the day trying to make it work. I know that he's done a lot of good to try to raise money for the emergency fund. I know that he's done a lot of good trying to make sure that students have all that they need. That's who I know Joey to be. I don't know about his time at RHA, but I can definitely speak to his time here with the SEC committee and all that he does and all that the emergency fund does. And I appreciate his cooperation and support.
All right, thank you so much, Steph, for that question. And anyway, if we could have some brief closing statements. I wish we had more time for student questions, but we've already been talking for about 45 minutes, which is longer than I expected, but hey, that's a sign of good debate. So anyway, Hunter, if you want to go first.
Yeah. So really, I don't have too much to add. I think that a lot of key points were brought up here in this debate. I think a number of different things were touched upon that are important. One thing that I really think that we need to do is when we're looking forward, when we're going forward, we need to know that we're not always going to know which problems have our attention. We're not always going to know which challenges we're going to have to face. But we definitely always need to know which challenges we're going to face with what strategy. And so that's kind of where my platform comes in. When I'm talking about humility and efficiency and openness and communication, these are the ways that we can go forward together to make sure that we're addressing whatever problem comes our way. You know, in these last 3 years of serving on USG, it's not always been easy. It's not always been peaceful. The one thing that I always say to my committee, and this is the one thing that we often close with, is that it's a meditation or a prayer, however you want to say it, is grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, right? The courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that's kind of become the finance committee's statement or meditation of this semester. And I think that that's really going to be what I bring to this role, and what I bring to this perspective is we have to have the serenity to accept the things that we cannot change. We can't change the coronavirus. We can't change if we're apart, if we're separated by oceans because of the fact that students aren't going to be able to get a visa to get back into the United States. We can't change that. But we can have the courage to make sure that our community is together in whatever way we can, even if it has to be over Zoom. And I think we all need the wisdom to know the difference between the two. So whatever the case may be, we'll go forward together and do it kind of as was outlined.
Right,
thank you very, very much. And thank you very much for hosting this debate, Matthew. I appreciate it.
Next, Joey, and then we're going to talk to the candidate for VP of Student Life.
Right. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Observer for hosting this forum for debate, those currently in office in the USG, and most importantly, everyone listening in on today's debate here and on YouTube when Matt posts it after he edits it nice and well. In this year's undergraduate student government elections, for all the positions running, there is a right choice. And that answer is to vote. If you have an opinion, you have to vote. It is essential to maintaining our democracy and vital to any hopes of improving the crew experience for each other. I ask everyone listening here today, as the president's portion of tonight's comes to a close, please vote for yourself, for your friends, and for your community. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that message. All right, next. Sophie, if you could introduce yourself with a quick opening statement, really appreciate it. And
awesome.
We can get started.
Thank you, Matthew. So my name is Sophie Villamara, and I'm running for re-election as your Vice President of Student Life. And so the reason why I joined this organization in fall of 2018 of my freshman year was because I wanted to have the ability to facilitate the student experience to be as smooth as possible, so students could only focus on academics and having the best experience that they could. And in fall 2018, this was kind of like, maybe I should make the dining hall food better. But as I stepped into the representative role and the VP role this past year, my understanding of like the nuances that go into the student experience have like totally expanded. And I've learned that past like student transportation, there are so many other variables: security, wellness, community involvement. I learn every day about a new way that I can better the student experience. And right now it's coming down to remote learning how to adapt to these new changes. And so what I want to do in this position is, and what I have been doing, is fostering a group of individuals in my student life committee who also have the same passion as me to make the student life experience as smooth as possible. And I've been working with these individuals for so many different facets, and I've been tuning into each of their passions, directing them in the way that they could go in order to like best help the student experience. And so last year I was able to make a lot of headway with like HEC, the move to HEC with different transportation, food, etc. I was able to help with creation of the food subcommittee, where we kind of discussed different ways that we could make a new meal plan to better increase student satisfaction. And we actually ended up getting a lot of headway on that through surveys and such. I also focus on transportation, increasing security, etc. But next year, I really want to get my hands into increasing student wellness and increasing USG student communication. And these are two things that have become underscored through this experience with dealing with our new transfer to remote learning. And so wellness, this deals with like physical, mental well-being. Students are consistently at risk for having impaired physical or mental well-being based on different stressors that they incur in their life, whether that be in home life or in university life. And I want to help facilitate this, whether that be by creating a new UHS or even like remotely trying to set them up with new mentorship plans academically or mentally. And as for communication, I realize that a lot of students definitely have a passion for helping each other out. There was the creation of the food pantry. There was the creation of a document where students in Cleveland could host other students who didn't have a place to live. And I really want to be able to reach out to these students who have those strong voices and those desires to help next year in order to give them a USG backing and help involve administration so that they can be able to facilitate their initiatives as quickly as possible. And if there's one thing that we've learned through all of this is that there's so many meetings that are capable of happening with like the click of a button. And I really want to be able to host different Zoom meetings so that students can reach out to me as soon as possible. This is something I've already been implementing because students have had multiple concerns over the past few weeks and I've been interfacing with them. And I want to continue to do so as everyone's Vice President of Student Life next year. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for that open statement. So first question, I know one of your main campaign promises is improving crews' mental health resources. What do you think is currently lacking in our approach to mental health, and what changes do you think need to be made?
All right, awesome. So I am currently a resident assistant, and I remember when I went through my month of training, they told me if any student has any mental issue that you don't think that you can personally deal with, you should defer them to mental health services. And so I spent the better half of my year telling my residents who had any concerns to like perhaps go talk to a counselor and get that sorted out, because from my knowledge at the time, it was once you go to a meeting, you're able to set up a one-on-one appointment as soon as possible. You're able to get that like first meeting in on arrival, their walk-ins and all of that. But when I was struggling with my own mental health this semester, I went to UHS and I was like, okay, I'm ready to get my walk-in appointment, ready to talk this out, ready to experience this resource. And I went and I had my first initial intake meeting where they kind of asked me what was going on. They told me that yes, like UHS would be able to help. And then they set me up for their next available counselor appointment, which was actually 1 month in the future. And I felt so disheartened that this was the resource that I had been recommending students to go to, because there was no initial like problem solution, and you would have to wait for that professional support. And who knows what can happen in a month's time. And this is like the average wait time that students have come to me complaining about for this whole year. And so what I really want to work towards is decreasing this wait time. And so two things that we can do is increase counselors. We can increase the space to have counselors as well. And so something that I will be working on is expanding UHS to go to Northside to better facilitate students from like all sides of campus to be able to go there, because right now we are doing what we can with what we have. And I thoroughly appreciate the university for putting its resources into that, into the UHS building and Sears whenever each is utilized, because Sears has walk-in appointments until 5 p.m. and then UHS has it afterwards. But at any rate, it's not enough to have as many counselors as there is demand. And so I really want to work together with the university in order to get more counselors and more space to have counselors. Something else that I'm working on too is, as an RA, I see how residence life is a huge touch point for students who want to kind of like chat about their mental health, maybe in an informal way. And I really want to increase the transparency of our RCDs, our residential community directors, and our assistant residential community directors, because I found that they're an extremely underutilized resource. they are prepared to answer questions about mental health, but students just don't see them as such. And it sucks because they are here like every day of the week on campus, ready to serve the students, and students don't necessarily feel like they have someone to talk to at all times. And so I definitely want to like increase that pipeline. Yeah.
Yeah, great. A month long wait time for a walk-in. That's ridiculous. So that's good that you're making that a big issue. So going further, I know that universal pass, no pass is a big issue right now. It's something that many students think is important for mental health. What's your opinion on that specific issue, and how would you try to reduce student stress around grades in general?
All right, that's awesome. So I've been working a little bit with a pass, no pass proposal. And so after looking through all of the results of the surveys, we got 2,500 responses, as Joy and Hunter referred to, and we got 1,500 comments. And so what we did this weekend was kind of like go through the comments, see each individual's cases as they presented them, and try to come up with a decision that would best impact the community in a positive way. And so what I initially believed would be kind of like the best idea for students would be a universal pass, no pass, because this would be able to take into consideration like just students that have kind of a more difficult home life, that would have more trouble adjusting to the situation and having the academic accommodations as necessary. But after looking at the student responses, I definitely shifted this response greatly, because there are so many students who have external stressors that they have at school. For example, there are students at school who work like 20 hours. They're involved in multiple extracurriculars, and they work outside of school in order to be able to afford their campus life. And so there definitely are like similar stressors that other students face, maybe a lesser portion, but we definitely shouldn't like look at numbers like that. As long as there is kind of a need, then we should address it. And so I believe that the best, I guess, answer for the pass no pass situation is an opt-out type of deal where everyone is given kind of a blanket pass no pass, after which they can opt out and get their letter grade. And I believe that this would help satisfy both ends of the debate as best as possible. And I guess there's more than two sides. There's like multiple angles to look at it, but with an opt-out view, students who need to apply to med school are able to do so with their grades and with the backing that the university does have like a pass-fail structure, and students who need their uncovered grades for jobs, scholarships, et cetera, are able to do so. And I believe that's something that we can do right now to help students lessen their academic stressors. Actually, I just got back from my student life committee meeting, and we were kind of discussing how this was the proposal that we were going to pose to administration with the opt-out, and we were discussing like maybe what type of stressors would students be facing. And so we realized that students that are right now on campus might be facing more stressors than students that are off campus with this like remote learning situation, in that they have less interaction, they're in their room by themselves, roommates are being separated. And so things that we could do to lessen their load is be able to increase our financial backing and supports for them. Something that the university is doing right now, or like allowing, is for students who are working on campus, because they still receive their monthly stipends, they are able to defer their monthly stipends to students, to the student activity fund that's used for COVID response. And so this is some way that students can help decrease the financial load, because I thoroughly believe that academics right now could be worse impaired by students who need to go out and find a place to eat, find food, find like basic living necessities, and that's what their mind is focused on. And all of these stressors really are financial. And so by eliminating that factor, and I guess we can never eliminate it, but by working to reduce that financial stressor, we can help increase student satisfaction with their academic experience in remote learning.
Yeah, I want to go back, because I know you mentioned the food pantry too earlier, and the food insecurity has existed on campus before COVID-19. I think COVID-19 definitely highlighted how big of an issue it is. So how would you address that issue of food insecurity on campus and like the expense of the meal plan, for example?
Okay, yeah, awesome. So this semester, something that I worked heavily on was looking at student satisfaction in kind of coordination with the meal plan. And so at first, when I went to the administration, I told them, look, some numbers that are floating around the student body, everyone says $17 for a meal, that's unacceptable. And so I took this information to the administration. I said, they know about this. this is what they're thinking. They're thinking they're not getting their value for money. And so the beginning half of the semester, we worked to increase our kind of like meal plan proportions. We kind of increased different portions in different special flight locations around campus, etc. But I realized that there was like a bigger issue to this whole problem. And it wasn't just me, it was my student life committee who helped me come to this realization, but it definitely was just the underlying cost of it is the bigger issue than not getting your value for money. And so my student life committee and I looked at peer institutions and saw different ways that Bon Appetit implemented meal plans in cheaper ways. And so we took this information to the administration. Marin, our president, presented it to the board of trustees, and we got a food subcommittee type forum thing implemented so that students and faculty alike can go through these different peer institutions and try to figure out a meal plan that is cheaper, where you get a higher value for money to be implemented in the 2021-2022 food year. And this is from a student life perspective. I know diversity and inclusion does a lot of great work with food insecurity, with Life Out Hunger, and those are all conversations that I'm kind of a part of, but I definitely don't want to step on their toes by taking over those amazing initiatives.
All right, great. So one last question, and then I'm going to open it up to the floor. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask, please just let me know. Just send me a Zoom chat. So I know a big concern that came up earlier in last semester was drunk students on Safe Ride and how drunk students are getting kicked off of Safe Ride cars. How would you use USG to address this concern about Safe Ride? And if there are any other changes that you think need to occur with the Safe Ride system, what are they?
Awesome. Okay. So this is actually a conversation that I've been in since day one of its inception. So basically, I've been interfacing with Frank Dems, who is the director of security who works closest with Safe Ride. I've been also working with Martin Wright, who actually works with the Safe Ride platform and the Safe Ride drivers. And so at first, when we heard about these accounts of students who, so just to like clarify for all the students, so the issue at hand is that some students that were in an inebriated like state were being denied rides. However, others were getting rides and there was no established policy on this. So students didn't know if they were mildly drunk, were they going to get 911 called on them, or would they just simply get a ride, or would they get denied? And so there was so much confusion and muddled talk surrounding this. And so what I did was Marin invited me to SPR, which is Student President's Roundtable, where I was able to reach out to presidents of all of the big organizations, or all of the umbrella organizations on campus. All organizations are big and great. And so that they were able to reach out to their constituents to tell me to send personal accounts of when this happened to them or a friend. And I took this information back to Frank. And so we looked through kind of the data, and he personally went through and saw like each call when it was made, because we asked students to provide like the date and time around which these issues occurred. And so Frank was able to take a look at these and tell me that he talked to these Safe Ride drivers specifically. But Marin and I definitely went back in and we told them that a policy had to be instated, because simply talking to Safe Ride drivers, okay, let me just clarify. So at the beginning, the policy for Safe Ride drivers was to use their discretion to decide whether or not a student could get a ride. And this was the bottom line policy that Frank kept telling me about. But I realized that this was definitely not enough for Safe Ride drivers who weren't trained to figure out whether a student was inebriated. For example, there were multiple accounts of diabetic students who had low blood sugar that were being denied rides because they seemed a little inebriated. And so definitely Safe Ride drivers are not the bottom line on being able to tell whether a student is drunk. There was no breathalyzer or objective information included. And so Safe Ride drivers using their discretion was definitely a dangerous way to phrase a policy. And so we made sure that Safe Ride established and published a policy to help the students kind of see where their policy was coming from. And this is up on their website now. And to further your question about how I think Safe Ride could be improved. So a few weeks ago, I guess before the quarantine situation and coronavirus basically took over our student experience, me and some committee members were working on kind of getting responsive transport segregated from Safe Ride, because after Safe Ride hours began, initially responsive transport, which is the accessibility type version of Safe Ride for students who have different like disabilities where they can't like transport across campus. So this responsive transport system was melded with Safe Ride after those hours of like 6 p.m. And so when responsive transport students wanted to get a ride, they would have to wait at our regular wait times. And so this definitely posed a huge problem, but we were able to get it segregated for the coming weeks. But unfortunately, that never happened post spring break. So hopefully that'll happen in the future. And yeah, something else that I also want to address regarding Safe Rides is that in my time at Case Western, we've gone from 4 to a dozen Safe Ride vehicles, which I think is amazing. But with that increased number has come increased demand. And so unfortunately, this great abundance of Safe Rides has not really been reflected in our wait times. And so I definitely hope to keep working with them to increase the amount of vehicles that we have operating.
All right, great. Thanks so much. So do any students have any questions about student life or anything? Oh, here. I guess not, but I know Avi asked if, though I can't ask this to every VP, I think since no one else is asking questions, I might as well ask you. He asked for you to respond to the same question he posed to the presidents about the fossil fuel divestment. Yeah. And specifically as student life, I think a big deal with that is also how does follow through work? Because that was something that was passed as a USG resolution and then never got turned into policy.
Right. Okay, so I guess I will try to respond as best as I can, not to kind of reiterate anything that Hunter and Joey said, and in the light of the news that our endowment will not be impacted by this, I definitely will work from a student life perspective to be able to let the student body voice be heard. And if students ever want to help maybe like co-author this legislation, I definitely will be able to point them in the right place. And I think a great first step would be able to talk to Sunrise crew and see what exactly like their needs are moving forward from a student life perspective and be able to connect them with the applicable administration.
All right, great. So do you have any closing statement you'd like to make?
It's just been an honor to serve in this position for the last year. I'm really proud of all of my successes, but I'm more hopeful for what can be for the next year. And I know this is a completely changing new situation that I'm heading into with this position, but I'm definitely ready to take it on, and I'm excited to see what the future of USG is like. And I hope you will consider me to be your Vice President of Student Life next year. Thank you.
Great. And now for VP of Finance, Cooper Reef.
I'm off mute now. Awesome. Hello.
Awesome. Hello. All right. Great. Now, if you could please give a quick opening statement.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Cooper Reef. I've had the great pleasure of serving with USG since my very beginning of the time at Case Western. I am going to be a rising junior, and I've had the chance to serve in the finance committee the whole time. And currently this year, I serve as a treasurer. So in this position, it has given me the opportunity to not only do the reimbursements and get a feel for the infrastructure that the position of Vice President of Finance needs to understand, that being campus groups and PeopleSoft and exactly how our university actually processes all this money. But it's also given me the chance to reach out and get to know and help problem solve with the student org members of over the 200 clubs that we get to work with on a daily basis and see their needs and their wants and how I and a potential VP of Finance role can help make their lives easier in exchange. 4 big things that I would like to cover in the position is first and foremost, being able to do reimbursements quicker. I think sometimes we get some flack about why reimbursements take so long to be done. And I think one big solution for that is the fact that we have so many members of our finance committee who can learn how to do reimbursements. In fact, they're actually just starting to practice that process. Last week, Hunter did a great job trying to teach people through how to do reimbursements. I'd like to implement having the entire committee doing those next semester, which will hopefully reduce the time that people are sitting without money in their bank accounts wondering when they're going to get it back from the university. In addition to that, now that we're going to have the whole committee being able to do the reimbursements, I would like for the treasurers to really focus more and hone in on answer emails that we get through our email address that's addressed to all the treasurers, and just kind of decrease response time so that we can try to do as many things as possible and just kind of increase what we're able to do as a committee and what we're capable of. In addition to those things, I would like to work on kind of a more equitable mass funding process. I would like to kind of use some metrics in order to make sure that clubs have their events properly funded, and that people who really could use more money in order to make a bigger impact on the student body get that money and get to have the opportunity to make their events all it can be. And finally, it goes without saying, but our university is currently in an unprecedented state where, COVID-19 has really thrown off our finances, and we're expecting for quite a different year as far as what our budget and our balance is going to look like. So I kind of want to use, especially my first semester, to steady that ship and kind of get us back on track, and hopefully provide minimal, if any, ripple effects that will affect the student body. I really, especially with all that's going on, I want coming back to university and worrying about the finances to be kind of the least of their worries.
Great, thank you so much. And I know one major part of your platform is making the reimbursement system faster. How do you think that system could change to be more efficient?
Yeah, so currently it's really just the 3 treasurers plus VP Hunter Stecco that are doing the reimbursements. And while sometimes that is good enough and we can sustain ourselves and kind of keep a net zero week to week, especially near the end of the semester and at times when clubs are requesting a lot of different reimbursements for like a big amount of events and there's tons of things to go over, we can occasionally get behind. But there's plenty of more people in the finance committee, probably like 7 or 8 at least, that will be able to learn and do reimbursements, where we should always be at a very low number that are sitting waiting to be done. And so that way that we don't get this big influx that we can't really handle. Same thing with flattening the curve. We want to flatten the reimbursement curve as well by increasing our capacity and the number of people that are able to do it.
All right, great. So what, besides the reimbursement system, what are some other big weaknesses or strengths that you see in the finance committee?
Well, I think overall, I've actually get such an easy job. I've had incredible leaders in both Sydney Davis and Hunter Stecco that have really just paved the way for where I'd like to take this committee and this position. Especially Hunter, I'd really like to feed off all the work. He's done an incredible job implementing the P card usage, which just makes it so much easier for clubs to get their reimbursements. And also, in addition to that, his work with starting to introduce some metrics in the mass funding process, and just being able to make sure that when we give out money, we give it to people that really deserve it and that want to do events and make their events all they can be. And I would like to increase that and keep that ball rolling in that aspect, and maybe such as attendance data for events. And year to year, we can see, oh wow, they're really more and more people are coming to this every year. We can really trust that they're going to use this funding and make this event even bigger than years past, and other metrics just to make sure that people get the money they deserve and that it's allocated fairly.
I'm wondering with the financial allocations, because one concern with doing it based on attendance or events, that it may have a negative impact on smaller clubs or brand new clubs that are just getting started and getting their feet wet. So how would it work for new clubs that are seeking funding if they have no event history or large attendance history they can point to?
Yeah, so it's not necessary that they provide these metrics, but actually something that Hunter implemented this year that I would like to see keep going is kind of a prohibitionary club standing, where clubs that are first just starting off kind of get extra money that doesn't have to be outported towards specific events that they can kind of use at their disposal, and they kind of get a little more freedom to help them get on their feet and get going. And of course, we have the mass funding guidelines that have been revised over the years, and I will continue to revise in order to best fit the needs of the clubs, that kind of reserves different money. So you don't have to be a club that does only giant big events that affect the whole student population. You can be a club such as robotics, where you're continually buying supplies and buying different things for a competition that internally you are entering in. So that no matter what kind of club you are, you have a set of guidelines that are going to fairly kind of serve what you're going to be purchasing, because there's clubs that buy capital purchases, there's clubs that buy supplies for a big event, and there's everything in between. So to make sure that I mean, that our mass funding guidelines fit just about every single club, and that no one gets screwed over because there's nothing written about what kind of club that they are. It's just going to help make everyone happier and makes everyone get the most money that they need.
All right. Now, after the failed club sports referendum, club sports sought to become a recognized ad hoc committee. What was your opinion on this potential move? And if club sports succeeded in becoming an ad hoc committee, how would that work financially?
Yeah, so Hunter's done a great job kind of communicating with them and meeting with them and seeing exactly what their needs are. And I fully support the ad hoc committee of club sports. I think that is really a great place for them. Like I said, how every club is different. Every club has different kind of funding that would help serve them best. I think an ad hoc committee for club sports would be a great place for them. Personally, being a treasurer of a club sport, I see that as a great way to make sure that we kind of get the funding that would be best reserved for the kind of events that we do. I mean, a club that travels to go play soccer is different than a club that plans a big event on campus. And I think that the formation of an ad hoc committee would really just
lean in a little bit. I can hear you. So what point did I cut off?
You cut off, there was one point of slight distortion, but you more cut off on talking about, it was after you said you were as a treasurer of a club sport.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so as a treasurer of a club sport, I kind of see the benefits that an ad hoc committee can have. And I really look forward to having this way. I mean, our mass funding guidelines, like I said, we kind of try to have it fit every single type of club. But I think for something like club sports, an ad hoc committee is the best place to make sure that the kind of events that they have are, that their funding is oriented in a type of way that's going to serve them best. I think currently our mass funding guidelines do a good but not great job of covering the kind of things that club sports have to buy, namely travel. It's basically a travel-based club. They go to play whatever sport they do at a different location. So I think that the formation ad hoc club is really going to help that money funnel into a place that will just increase the amount of money that they get for their certain events and decrease the amount of dues that they're going to have to pay. And overall, yeah, I'm in total support of it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Sorry about that technical difficulties, everybody.
Huh.
Does anyone have any questions for Cooper about finance that they'd like to bring up? Going once, going twice. All right. So any closing statements you'd like to make?
Just it's been so great to serve as a treasurer this year, and in USG as a whole. I really have grown so much love around the organization, and I'm looking forward to, in some form, way or another, continuing my love for USG and my passion, and being able to continue to make change at the university. Thank you for your time.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Cooper. And next, it's going to be academic affairs. So Bisha Ray Chowri, we could make an opening statement.
Yes. So hi, everyone. My name is Badisha. I am the current Vice President of Academic Affairs, and I'm very excited to be running for re-election. So like Hunter said earlier, this has been such an unprecedented time in our lives, and it's made me very appreciative of the people that I've been able to work with, and each and every person at Case Western that I've had the privilege of meeting, whether it be in this role or outside of it. So through this role, I've been able to collaborate with a phenomenal committee, inspirational student body, and hardworking admin. And it was this collaboration with these passionate members of our community that allowed me to advocate for student concerns after remote learning was first instituted, to work with faculty to establish the opt-in pass-no-pass grading policy for this semester. So this year, our collaboration proved invaluable on several initiatives, and the first that I'd like to mention is reducing out-of-pocket course fees that are not billed to tuition. So these course fees are like Alex, WebAssign, MindTap, and my friends in the theater program even said that their midterms cost them upwards of $90 out of pocket for the materials they had to purchase, and they got no reimbursements for those. And so the objective of this initiative was to improve the transparency of these costs, but we actually got the conversation started on whether or not these costs should even exist, and having a legitimate conversation about the necessity of these programs when you have these classes that also use worksheets. So it's just like a double layer of assignments for students, basically. Further, we kind of built on the work done by the previous Vice President of Academic Affairs the year before this year, Radhika Dugal, and then we did, and the previous president, Maya Rao, on making student workload more transparent. So this is involved with making course descriptions a little more detailed in SIS, similar to the way that Princeton University has it, where you can see factors such as like how much work you put into class per week, how many exams, readings, projects that you have to do. So we are now talking about implementation through my committee. So I got opinions from GA, and I'm looking forward to getting opinions more broadly from the community as well on what they would like to see, whether it is a syllabus database or whether it is directly input it into SIS. I've had conversations with both the managers of SIS and with undergraduate studies on creating a database. So we're just kind of figuring out what best options are to go forward with this. So also we are, I've been advocating for a consistency in the proposed writing seminar replacement for SAGES. And so Radhika, Hunter, and I actually went to the Board of Trustees meeting in late February, and there I specifically advocated for consistency in SAGES because that's been a problem that I've been seeing with students. That's been a common theme of complaints that I've received, whether it's be in my peers or whether it be informally through USG. So we wanted to target that more. And also building off of Radhika's earlier initiative to institute a peer mentorship program that would connect incoming students to current students and easing the transition from high school to college. So I plan to continue these, but then I also intend to initiate creating these required teaching seminars for faculty to strengthen the integrity of courses at CRUB, since many of them are very inconsistent, and also increasing support for student mental health academically, and expanding job opportunities available for non-STEM students at the career fair, and improving communication between admin and students. So to speak on the career fair a little bit, that has been a common problem that we have, that everyone that has pretty much run for a USG position has mentioned that they've seen a lack of this, and now we are actually going to try to target that and solve it so the career fairs in the future can be a little bit more conducive to those people that are in non-STEM majors. And for communication between admin and students, we've seen so much lapse in the communication. Like even when the first pass no pass grading policy came out, I started informally telling the students that had reached out to me because I wanted them to know, because they had demonstrated concern, and I asked them to share with their friends informally before an official statement was made. But then that official statement wasn't made for about 5 days. So there are a lot of decisions that the administration make, especially about communication. I'm fortunate to be looped in on a lot of them, but I'm not looped in on communication. So I want to improve that and strengthen that. So that being said, I am really excited again to run and to rerun. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to what this year will hold. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I want to jump off your mention of the peer-to-peer thing you're thinking of creating, because I know CASE has some things that are supposed to kind of replicate that, with some of how the orientation leader, for example, or I'm blanking out on the specific name of the program, but when you're a prospective student and you stay over at someone's dorm.
Right.
That
the
too.
Sahran ambassadors.
Yeah. How would that peer-to-peer mentoring that you want to create, how would that be different from those two programs?
So this program would specifically target the students' transition directly. So orientation, that is mainly focused in the first week. So to now discover week, basically. And so this would be throughout the summer. So the students have a point of contact who they can refer to, who they can ask questions to regarding what classes should I take, which professor should I take, I need to create a 4-year plan, can you help me do that? It's that sort of support, but then it's also when they send out the dorm stuff, what do you need for your dorm? I know so many people from my high school have personally reached out to me, so this would be a more formalized process. If there are people who don't know anyone who's already at Case Western, they can reach out to that person, their point person, and they can say, hey, I have these questions, can you help me answer them? And it's just since it's not like a formally like an adult, it's not someone who isn't your advisor or your navigator, it's a little bit more personal, and you can build a stronger connection with them, and you feel a little bit more connected to the university when you go into it.
Great. Another idea from your letter of intent that I found absolutely fascinating was mandatory teaching classes for new professors. Why do you think that is necessary, and what do you think these classes should be like focused on teaching?
So this was actually brought up, this idea specifically was brought up by one of my committee members, Ben George. And so when we were talking about it and we were bouncing ideas, like the thought process is that a lot of faculty kind of, they are hired because they are great in research. And being a research university, I really, really admire that. But that means that the courses that they teach are kind of inconsistent, because then you have really, really smart professors that may not know how to relate the material. So these seminars for the professors could look like different ways to cater to students who have different types of learning, because as we know, all of our peers don't have the same way of learning as we do. And that's fine, that's normal. So like showing them that this is something that they need to be considering, that this is, because often they're also just very far removed from their own collegiate careers, which again, like it's expected. So just like kind of bringing that all back in and saying like, you are still a teacher. You are still responsible for conveying your material. This is a way that if you don't know how to convey your material, this is a way you can do it. And if not, then you can use what we say and you can create something that works for you. But either way, that at least you have a good standard and a good basis for how classes are run.
Yeah, and especially because a lot of professors may not even have research. They may just be from career field, like in the English department, for example, you have professors who are known authors. So I think that is a very, to acquiesce my journalistic objectivity on this one issue, I think that is a great idea. So a big concern, I know, amongst a lot of non-STEM students, but a lot of STEM students as well, is a lack of new professors. So how do you think USG should be involved in hiring?
So I think that first we should be gathering feedback from students on what they like to see in their professors, so common themes that they'd like to see, like professors that are either considerate, professors that are just very receptive, communicative. Like I know I had a professor who said that she, if we emailed her, we couldn't expect a response from her, unless like we should have expected a response from her in 3 to 5 business days. And that was just a little jarring, because I remember one day I was really sick and it was the day before an exam, and I knew that if I emailed her, she wouldn't have seen the message before the exam. So it's these kinds of things where you can like have a more personal connection with the professor, and you can have student input on what they like to see, common themes that we like to see, which is actually, like, now that you bring it up, like that is something that I would like to pursue like directly through feedback. And I think that way we can holistically create this idea of the common profession that we like to expect. And that students to be involved. I know for most hiring processes also, they ask for a student to be on their committee to find a professor. I know that this is in place for even deans as well as even the presidential search advisory committee. So, yeah.
Am I repeating just the last 30 seconds? I think there was some like other sound coming out from one of the other people talking. Just the last 30 seconds of your statement.
Oh, basically what I was saying is that I think it's really important to get student feedback on what we need to see, like what we want to see from future professors, so that there are common themes that the people who hire these professors are just more cognizant of what the students want. Because they hire these people that are very, very smart, very good at research, but then they're not always the best faculty. And so focusing more on that and focusing more on how students can go into that could be very, very important.
Great. And also, I know you talked about increasing non-STEM representation at the career fair. And another thing people have issue with is non-STEM representation in USG itself, which often bleeds over to university decision-making. How would you, if at all, have USG represent the interests of non-STEM students more?
I think we should start by just echoing sentiments of what other leaders that have spoken today have said, going to the students directly, I think is the first step. I think during this whole like COVID-19 crisis, we have all built a sort of community where we're all listening to each other, regardless of what major we're in, because we're all online, we're all confused, so we're all communicating. So I think the stigma from that is already a little reduced, but like now we still have to put in the work to continue that, to make sure that we are hearing each other and we are seeing each other as people and not by our majors, and we're not comparing ourselves either. So I think if we start by just reaching out as much as possible, as keeping up these conversations, keeping up these relationships, I think that could go a long way in reducing any crew stigma between choosing non-STEM and STEM majors, and also just building connections, these important connections that we need to be having with each other.
All right, great. Any closing statements you would like to make? And if there's anyone who has any questions, please send me a Zoom message. Go ahead. If you have a closing statement that you'd like to make, or did you say everything you want to say?
Oh, I just want to say that I am very grateful again to have been able to work with you all, and I am excited to just meet more people in the role potentially, and I would be very humbled to receive your vote to continue as Vice President of Academic Affairs. And if you have any questions at all about what I said, you can always email me or reach out to me at bids@case.edu. So that's bids@case.edu. So thank you so much for your time.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Next is going to be for VP of Public Relations, Alex Gould. Also running is Angela Ryu. She could not make it to the Zoom meeting today, but again, she's also running, so please read her letter of intent online. All right.
Could you repeat that one more time?
Oh, I was just saying, if you want, it's time for your opening statement, and also that Angela Ryu is also running, so please read the letter of intent that's online on the USG website to get her ideas on what she's thinking of for the position. Also, if you have any questions for Alex, please just send me them to the Zoom chat at any point.
Awesome. All right. Well, first off, thank you, Matt. Thank you to the Observer for hosting this. Even though we can't do it in person, I think it's really kind of cool and that we can just do it over Zoom virtually and share our platforms with each other. So I guess to introduce myself, hello, my name is Alex Gould. I'm a sophomore marketing major here with minors in economics, psychology, and public policy. And I'm running for re-election to once again serve as your Vice President of Public Relations next year at USG. So I kind of want to start my opening statement by just talking about why I joined USG initially. And I joined USG, started my freshman year as a first-year representative, and I initially joined because I saw in high school, I said, oh, our student council, they don't make changes there. There's nothing substantive. I want to make a difference, right? How can I do that at USG? And I had no idea how I could do that. But finding this niche and love of mine in PR through my trajectory in USG has been incredible for me. And that's why I'm running for re-election to once again serve as a VP of PR next year. I've learned that nothing else can happen in USG without public relations. There's this really special, cool, symbiotic relationship between the student body and us as a USG, where we need to understand the pulse of the student body. We need to understand what they want. And we as a USG need to really connect with them, reach out to them to ensure that we're working with each other to make the changes that the students want to see. Particularly in a time like this with the COVID-19 pandemic. It's a time of crisis. Communication is more important now than ever before. So therefore this year I'm kind of running on the platform of three main pillars: connection, transparency, and experience. And I'm excited to kind of talk about a little bit more about what that means to me and then how the platform will affect students.
Okay, great. So first off, I was wondering how you plan on using the USG social media platforms such as Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook to increase outreach.
Great question. So social media has been definitely a focus of my first year in the position. We actually created a YouTube and Twitter this past year for the first time, which is a really cool kind of venture. We also increased our Instagram engagement and following by over 100%. All really cool milestones. We're happy to see this increased following, and we're happy to have this increased outreach, right? But how do we expand on that in year two? And there are a few main ways I want to do that. First off, the YouTube and Twitter, although we created them, they are still in their infancy. They need content expansion and they need follower expansion. So some ideas of how to do that in my second year in the role would be, for the YouTube, I've already introduced initiative spotlights. Initiative spotlights are internal. What are we in USG doing initiative-wise? However, I think it's important to now introduce a spotlight series about all of you externally, the students. And my vision for that would be a club spotlight, where individual representatives from student orgs are interviewed by USG so we can provide a platform for our student orgs to talk about what they're doing. I also would like to introduce on YouTube discussions with figures at our general assemblies, because RGAs, a lot gets done there. A lot is being decided on, a lot of decisions are made, and I think the student body should know who's speaking at a GA, what's going on, and little interviews, discussions would be great for that. Regarding Instagram content expansion, I think we're doing, for this first time this year, we've posted club flyers to promote events around campus on the Instagram. And as I said earlier, we've increased engagement and following by over 100%. However, there definitely is room to grow. I know we've worked with the Observer a bit this year in terms of live streaming our general assemblies, and unfortunately that had a bit of a standstill, but I really, really want to get that done next year because I think it's so important to be able to see our GAs in real time. I also would like to post more general content to our Instagram, such as CWRU events going on, having reps take over Instagram and post story videos so we can see what does our VP of D&I do in a day? What meetings does that person go to? Just to give people a more inside human look into what USG is.
Gotcha. So use a mix of also, so along with the more official, oh, this is our GA, you're going to use it for as well to kind of humanize the different members and be like, hey, this is what a day looks like, kind of thing.
Exactly. It's like the two kind of like lanes of the formal and the we are students too.
Great. Any current initiatives that you wish to expand outside of these social media ones in terms of PR?
Yeah, there's a lot. The PR list never ends. That's the thing with PR, right? There's never a stopping point. You can always do more. One of the big ones for me is actually a key piece of my connection pillar to the platform I'm running on is in-person outreach and feedback. And this year, we've really started prioritization of being present and seeing you in person. And how we've done that is through the implementation of PR office hours. We've also, we had pretty much our most well-attended event in years. We had an Insomnia Cookies event that over 500 students participated in and got feedback, which was huge for us. That's the start. I think that's the seed of something really great, where we want to see you. We don't only want emails and virtual stuff. We want to be face-to-face. So I guess the question in year two is, what do we do to expand that, to be able to see students more and increase that connection? And my vision is having more food events. I have a PR budget, and now that I know more about the PR role and have experience, I will know how to budget it more properly throughout the year so we can maybe do multiple food events throughout the year. I also would hope to do some town halls. If there's anything going on around campus that's an important major event, if there's any problem, concern going on, let's host a town hall and let students talk about it with us. And then finally, I want to introduce USG pop-ups. And USG pop-ups would be out of nowhere. We pop up around campus. Maybe we have a little giveaway with us. Maybe we have feedback forums. Maybe we just want to talk to you as students. But we'll pop up around campus and we'll post things on social media when we get there. Again, just to talk with all of you, because more than anything else, it's about getting out there so the students know that we're there for them. And also, we understand what the students want, so we know what to change internally.
Great. So I know, so a lot of this is also mainly about having USG go to students more than the other way around. So, because I was wondering, outside of, because I know there's stuff like Feedback Fridays, are you going to create any other official avenues that are for getting input from students in that kind of formalized way? Because I noticed one thing about your platform is having USG representatives speak to specific classes. How would you determine like those kind of classes that you would speak at?
Great question. So that's actually something, we did a trial run for that this year. And again, this is the thing about year one versus year two. That's one of the things where I had so many other priorities and trying to just rebuild and build this committee up that I didn't put as much effort into as I would have liked. And as you said, that's the formalized way of reaching out. I talked about a lot of big scale events, but what about individual USG members getting out there? And it's really important. So a lot of times for Feedback Friday, students aren't walking through Sears or Nord or Tink or wherever we are, or maybe reps can't make it to table either because they have meetings or classes. So one area and round I really want to do is, for the first time this year, we've actually fully made Feedback Friday virtual. We have all our forms on Google Forms. We have QR codes. The paper isn't necessary. And what it means without paper is that Feedback Fridays are now movable, that we can do them anywhere. We don't need paper and pen sitting at a table. We can go anywhere. So as you said, I would like an idea where we have this internal kind of USG system where every semester we expect our representatives to attend 2 PR events per semester. So I would like for one representative to maybe if there's this for one feedback form each week, one representative can say, that's my baby for the week. That's my feedback form that I'm going to take control of. And I can talk with that representative and we can go over some bigger classrooms as well as that representative's own classes that the rep can speak in, use the QR code and just and project up on the screen and talk to classes. And if that rep speaks in about 3 to 5 classes, then that'll be a PR credit. So half the PR credits for the semester done for that representative.
All right, great. Now, do you have any closing statement that you'd like to make?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess when I'm thinking about this year and what's happening now with this COVID-19 pandemic, it's been hard on a lot of people. It's been troubling for a lot of people. I know from the PR end of things, I've gotten emails, texts, even Instagram DMs saying, my family can't afford this because of what's going on. The university's doing this, but this is going to affect me in this way. And every time, like, it hits at my heart every single time because, like, wow, this is so real, this situation, and it's affecting so many people, affecting their mental health and physical well-being and their families' financial well-being in ways that could never have been anticipated. And that inspires me to say, what can we as a USG? How can we further reach out to you, support you, understand your perspective to represent you? And I know that even though the time is hard, I want all of you students to know that we as a USG and I personally will always be there for you. We will always care for you. We will do anything in our power to represent your voice to the administration and try to make the changes you want to see and that can help you, particularly in a time like this that's really, really tough. And ultimately, that's been the beauty of USG for me, the realization that these issues are real, and through understanding you and talking to you and really understanding your perspective and hearing you, we can try to make that change. USG for me has been a place where I've been able to build lifelong friendships, grow as an individual and leader, and foster more change than I ever could have expected. So it's been incredible, and the opportunity to do this as VP of PR for another year would be amazing for me. I would really, really appreciate your vote. It'd be an honor to serve once again. And also, representativeness is so important, so please vote for all the positions at vote.case.edu, April 15th and 16th.
Great. Sorry to tack on one last question after that closing statement. But with like the limited amount of time and resources that you're working with as a PR VP, how are you going to choose to promote certain student initiatives over others?
Interesting question. So one thing I do want to know is the PR resources have expanded exponentially this year. Through the committee, I've really tried to create this community. One of our representatives, his name's Prithish, we had a guest at our committee, and one time the guest said, what is a PR committee like? And Prithish said, well, it's more like a family than a committee. And that really hit at my heart, because that's what I'm trying to build with PR, right? It's a family, it's a place where we grow together, work together, unite, and through that we can accomplish our goals and bond over this unique mission of being with students. And I think this belief in our mission and this idea that we are a family has allowed us to grow from 6 to 16 members this year. PR has more people than ever before, and we're going to be able to reach out to more students and do more things than ever before. At the start of the year, I never could have even imagined doing all these events and all these feedback processes and all this focus on social media, but now it's possible. And also what's great is through our Feedback Friday initiative, one Friday for the whole year, every week for the whole year, we can always have a new initiative to focus in on, to zone in on. And this year I've really prioritized hoping that admin or students can both reach out to USG, and we'll be happy to roll out a Feedback Friday about a student initiative too. I know Avi's been asking questions to previous VPs about fossil fuel divestments. Actually, this past week we sent out a feedback form for Sunrise Crew, his newly recognized USG organization, and their feedback form, and I actually went to their general body meeting too. So I'm always there to support clubs, help clubs out. I want to do whatever I can really to help student initiatives happen.
I gotcha. So just to be a bit more concise, so basically you're going to use feedback sessions to determine which initiatives you think have more student interest, and then use that knowledge to then kind of allocate PR resources accordingly.
Yeah, exactly. We have more resources to allocate than before. And the good part is usually we don't have Fridays that there's a surplus for the year, where if any student comes to us about an initiative, we are able to roll out a Feedback Friday for them. We've never had an issue of too many initiatives for USG or PR to handle this year.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it.
No problem. And all right, next, VP of Diversity and Inclusion, So for this, we have three candidates: Sharan Mehta, Wentata Ayobi, and Sonia Villa. If you guys would each give a quick opening presentation, just quick opening statement in that order, that'd be great.
Thank you, Matt. Hello, everyone. My name is Sharan Mehta, and I'm running for USG's next Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion. I'm excited to be here today to share my vision with you. Too many times, I've experienced myself or seen other students on our campus be challenged by accessibility, whether it's financial, social, or physical. I want to ensure every student in that crew has an equal opportunity to succeed. In my letter of intent, I spoke about ways like the e-textbook library and the resource center, with which I hope to give our fellow students an equal platform, and I hope to follow through on these projects. I also hope to create a D&I committee that is proactive and aware of our student needs and whose members are willing to passionately advocate for your success. I am proud of the initiatives I have completed in the past, and I want to empower my fellow representatives to build campus relationships and effectively complete their own initiatives. Tonight, I hope I can show you my dedication to the role and truly earn your worth.
All right, great, thank you. And next, Wentata.
Hi, Case Western. My name is Wintana Eob, and I am running for the Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion. I am a rising junior double majoring in biology and cognitive science. Since joining USG, I have been an active member in both the Diversity and Inclusion Committee and Academic Affairs Committees. I also sit on the Faculty Senate Subcommittee for Advising, Mentoring, and Student Success, where I provide student insight on the new undergraduate general education requirements. My extensive experience in leadership has granted me the knowledge and confidence to actively communicate students' concerns with administrators, facilitate impactful initiatives that have a lasting impact, and collaborate with fellow students. Through these experiences, I have learned the art of multitasking, communicating with administrators, and providing student insight. These valuable lessons will guide me as a future VP of D&I Committee. I will bring a new perspective while ensuring a safe space for others to share their own perspectives. If elected to the position, I want to focus on three main things: collaboration, integration, and community. I have learned these three aspects are vital to the success of the D&I Committee. If elected to the position, I want to focus on those three main things. This year, USG and UDC have cultivated a strong relationship, and I am committed to strengthening that relationship. I also want to collaborate more with administrators, such as Vice President Solomon and Director Sig, and other marginalized student organizations on campus. Within our assembly, I am calling for better representation of our constituents. The main goal of D&I Committee is to advocate for marginalized groups on campus, and we need more voices at the table to cultivate change. Lastly, as Vice President, I not only want to better the sense of community at Case, but I also want to better the sense of community within our surrounding Cleveland community. By building on this relationship, the success of Case Western's community can facilitate the success of the larger Cleveland community and vice versa. The D&I Committee has made tremendous strides in our initiative work. We must continue to build upon the momentum and hit even more milestones. Your vote is crucial in determining the future of our university, and I would be glad to be your next VP of D&I.
All right, great, thank you so much. Sonia, my bad.
No, you're all good, Matt. Can everyone hear me? Are we good? I just want to make sure. Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. So anyone that doesn't know me, I am Sonia Valu. I am a rising junior studying biomedical engineering, and I am currently one of USG's treasurers. I've been a part of USG since my third day in Cleveland, so it's always been a large part of my crew experience. Since joining, I've been a part of the D&I committee, and this year I had the opportunity to commit myself to both the finance and D&I committee. As a D&I representative, I've worked really hard to continually advocate for people and groups that either didn't have the means to or know how, and through working as a treasurer, I've been able to establish really strong relationships with countless student organizations to consistently bring their voices to the table when we were making final decisions, to ensure that the effects of our choices were directly helping them instead of causing more stress. Through the D&I committee, I've worked to negotiate a zero balance policy for students with loans dispersing after registration dates, and on creating a student-led guide to financial insecurity on campus that really hopes and to alleviate financial stress that some situations have imposed on students that most of the time administration and possibly even campus organizations don't quite recognize that students are going through. As VP, if I had the honor to be elected as your VP, I want to cultivate a welcoming environment that anyone, whether they're a part of USG or not, feels that they belong to. And I think in order to do this, we need to strengthen our relationship with the existing campus organizations like the LGBT Plus Center, OMA, Office of Multicultural Affairs, OWIDIO, like Wintana mentioned earlier with Director Solomon, which is the Office of Inclusion, OWIDIO, Office of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equal Opportunity, and also organizations like UDC, the University Diversity Collaborative. I think that in doing this, we can ensure that our committee is doing the most to go out to diverse communities, to go to where diversity exists on campus instead of waiting for them to come to us or even expecting them to come to us. I want to strive to collectivize the responsibility of amplifying these voices, and in hopes that empowering my reps to have these conversations, that they bring them back to GA and they bring them back to those other committees that they sit on, so that we are representing our diversity and inclusion work throughout USG and not just constrained within the D&I committee, which it shouldn't be. And I think that in doing this, I hope that my representatives can bring a perspective that really allows for students that feel safe in their organizations to not have to come and be a part of USG, but to know that we are representing them in our general assemblies. I've seen so much change that the Diversity Inclusion Committee can do for campus, and I would be absolutely honored if I could lead it and further the committee with the knowledge I've gained from this organization.
Great, thank you all so much. Now I want to start off, Wintana, because you mentioned about Cleveland and Brian, the relationship that, and that's something that I'm also personally passionate about. So I was wondering, how do you plan on doing that and building those relationships with Greater Cleveland and like getting students to be more willing to break out of the Case Western bubble?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I guess what really sparked that is one time I was in a safe ride, and my safe ride driver, Ray, she was driving me to the heck, and she was talking about how Case is continuing to grow and it's forcing a lot of Cleveland families out of the greater Cleveland area. And I kind of took that to heart, and I was like, well, what are our administrators doing to ensure that we are not kind of encroaching on the Cleveland community? One thing that I have already been kind of implementing, I've reached out to the Cecil office to see what are some volunteering options that we can expand upon and what areas in Cleveland are of greater risk and how USG can help facilitate those relationships. Personally, how I've tried to kind of burst that Case Western bubble, I've been volunteering at this refugee crisis center in downtown Cleveland, because I feel like it's important to not only talk about what you want to do, but actually show that through your actions. So that's how I've personally been trying to do that. And I hope my fellow representatives will also follow you.
Okay. If any of the other candidates would like to follow up on that question? Yes,
Yeah, Matt, if I could. Thank you for the question. And I completely agree with everything Tana said. I think that instead of trying to replace the communities that outside of our Case campus, is to figure out ways how to help them to flourish and to continue to become a part of our existing campus, and to merge those worlds that we've tried to keep apart for a long time. I think that in being treasurer, I've seen a lot of clubs come to be recognized that have really focused on bringing work outside of just Case's campus. A lot of them have focused on volunteer opportunities in those communities, like Wintana said, at centers like the Refugee Crisis Center, as well as going to several different places downtown, etc., just to widen people's accessibility to those things, because a lot of times maybe kids just don't know about them and students don't know about them. And I think that it's important to encourage these types of things on campus and to to make it a more of an environment that we are willing to learn and educate students about instead of just going in and trying to change things.
Yeah, I agree with everything Sonia and Ventana said. I mean, Case's relationship with its Cleveland community is something that has been struggling for a really long time. Uh, Another way I see this, I definitely agree with the Cecil, with more opportunity with the Cecil office. As an RA, something I actively look to do is work with the Cecil office to give my residents more opportunities to engage with the Cleveland community and be able to give them that opportunity to volunteer. But I don't think it stops just at volunteering. I think we need to be able to build a Cleveland community within Case Western itself. Our percentage of commuter students is a single digit, which I mean, given that we are located in Cleveland, you can be a commuter student if you live within 40 miles of campus, is really low. I feel like we don't have enough students from the city who come to Case Western, and I feel like that lack of Cleveland representation within our student body is a major factor of why other students who come from everywhere else around the world in our diverse population don't interact that much with Cleveland. And that's something that I have. These are questions that I actively ask the provost during the tuition forum. And these are questions like the tuition forum. And these are questions I want to continue asking and something I want to push for with the platform for VP, because I feel like that this isn't something I've been able to push for strongly enough as a rep. And I feel like with the platform for VP, it'd be easier and it'd be harder to I would be able to push harder for those questions to be answered and those questions to have solutions to. And yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Now, the other thing I want to mention is a lot of buildings don't have handicap accessibility. Either they have stairs or they don't have elevators or they don't have buttons that automatically open the door. How would each of you address that as VP of Diversity and Inclusion? I know Sahran, you mentioned this in your letter of intent, so if you want to start.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of this is a project really close to me. Something I've been working on since freshman year is trying to complete this audit of accessibility resources available on our campus. Our campus was built so long ago, most of its buildings don't have accessibility accommodations that are up to date or help students today. And I mean, even a building like Yost is so inaccessible. It has 5 entry points, but only one of them at the back of it. I mean, Staley doesn't even have an entry point for anyone with, say, like a mobility impairment. So something that I've already been doing has been collecting extensive feedback. We did a feedback survey in my freshman year, that was 2 years ago, on residential buildings, and we collected tons of data on which accessibility accommodations are inadequate in residential buildings, and we've been working with John White to work on them. Something that has been a stumbling block for those improvements has been the lack of money that the housing department has, especially with the new Southside buildings that have been building up. So it is something that is still in the works, and it is something that we've been able to make small improvements on. We've been able to get some more ramps. We've been able to even cement the ramps that are broken now. And it's been a huge improvement to some people. We've been able to get more automatic doors in some not residential buildings, which has also helped more people be able to move just in and out through the buildings. Something I've been doing this year has been collecting feedback on accessibility accommodations in academic spaces, which is different from residential. And this is something I hope to push even harder next year, because this is working with a different campus administration. This is working on a much larger space. This is working for much larger improvements that need a lot more money, which is why I believe I need a bigger platform to be able to push this even harder. I already have a almost comprehensive list. I'm working even more to ensure that when I push for this, it has everything. I have a relationship with the Office of Disability Resources, an office that I've been working with closely for the past 2 years. And I hope to use that relationship to my advantage when I push for this. I met with Ebony Porter, who's their director right now, about a month ago on this issue. And she said she will back me 100% if I can collect the feedback and give it to them, because that is something they don't even have. They don't have the audit. And I want to be able to give them the audit to push for meaningful change. And so those are steps I think would be that's my action plan for now. But yeah.
All right, great.
I would like, can I add to that? Oh, sorry, Sonia.
No, you're totally fine, Wintana. Go ahead.
Okay. I honestly think it's commendable for the work that Sharan has done regarding this. I think it's important to continue to advocate for students who might feel like their voice has been silenced on campus. And it, just by the research that he has done based on this initiative, to see that the multitudes of buildings on campus are not easily accessible to all students, it's kind of alarming. And we need to continue to strive to work with administrators and making sure that all these buildings are accessible to the students. So
Yeah, I just want, like Wintana said, Sharon and as well as several DNI committee members have worked extremely hard on trying to get this through, because accessibility is posing a large problem on our campus. And something that I've seen throughout the process, that a lot of times there isn't just enough manpower to do these audits, to go to these buildings. And I think as VP, I would encourage all of my reps, as well as everyone a part of USG, to help each other out in going to these audits, to make sure that we can get the feedback that administrators want to see, and to make sure that we're all working together towards this. I would encourage my reps that are working on this to come to me if there are any problems, if they need more resources, if they need help talking to administrators. I will be there along the way. I think that the work of representatives is not to be discredited, and in no way do I think that as VP, I think, I want my representatives to feel like their initiatives are in their power and that they have the power to do this no matter where they stand. So I think I would just encourage everyone to help them to get this audit done, to get the feedback we need, as well as feel confident to go through and talk to administrators about these issues.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Now, another issue that's now come up a lot is like crew being more inclusive for students whose second language is English. Like, for example, La Alianza sent a request asking USG to support a proposal that included having Spanish language translators available during Discovery Week. So what is your opinion on that specific piece of legislation? And also, how would you make crew more inclusive to people who may not be, have that first language fluency with English?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, Matt. And I think it stems from kind of the relationship we have with a lot of our international students as well. I think that when these problems arise, we definitely need to be proactive in trying to solve them as soon as possible, because if students are experiencing these issues, then their crew experience is automatically being hindered. I think that going along with this and trying to find action steps for it, I think we can go through our faculty and administration and try and see who can help and who is best trained and who is best equipped to help us with these situations, as well as looking into bringing more faculty on board or more people in those positions to specifically help our international students or people where their second language is English. I think it's also important to encourage a mindset with our faculty and our administration that students are experiencing this, and to show compassion to them that their first language is not English when they submit assignments and things like that. I think it's extremely important. I think we, in working with our several campus organizations, can come together to work towards finding an actual plan that can help these students. Like I said, finding faculty, possibly bringing people on board, making sure that these students have the resources that they know that they can find, possibly compiling these resources so that students know where they are. I seem to find that in case we will dive into an issue and come to find that we do have resources, students just really don't know about them. So I think that's really important going forward.
I would like to add upon that. I think with the La Alianza proposal, I was in huge favor for that, specifically because it not only helps with the Latinx community, but it also set a precedent for other marginalized student organizations on campus, that if they have a proposal and there's something that they're extremely passionate about, that they will have the support of USG, not only USG, but also the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And that's also something that I really want to work towards, is continuing that collaboration with other marginalized student organizations and giving them the voice and the time that, no matter what they want to pursue, we are here for them and we're willing to take their feedback in. that is something that I have written in my letter of intent, continuing to collaborate with other marginalized student organizations.
Yeah, Wintana couldn't have said it better. I think it is important that we use the La Alianza proposal and champion it through to serve as a role model for every other proposal that will come in the future. With just second language being a barrier, I mean, I'm an international student. English was not the language I grew up with at my home. When I came first week of orientation, I was sharing a table with a family that identified Mandarin as their first language, and their children had to translate everything from speeches to instructions. It is not an easy process. It is not. I didn't have to do it. Luckily, my dad understands English. My mom is okay, but it is a challenge, and that is true. And I feel like the second I saw La Alianza's proposal, my first thought was, this does not have to be limited just to Spanish material in orientation week. It can include so many other languages just from the beginning, from the get-go. If these parents and these students can feel included and they can feel comfortable within that orientation week, I feel like that could be the basis to setting up stronger second language programs for them through the International Student Services Department. And I mean, which is why, like, immediately I set up a meeting with the president of La Alianza. I don't know if Amber is on this call, but I'm meeting her tomorrow to ask her if it's okay if I can present my ideas to Kathy, who's the orientation director, on expanding that proposal to not just Spanish, but also other languages, and being able to be more inclusive in the orientation week material.
Yeah. And I know another major issue too is a lack of faculty diversity. The faculty here is 75% white, only 3% Hispanic, and 3% African American. And do you think USG, and specifically the VP of Diversity and Inclusion, should have a role in hiring professors to remedy this diversity issue? And how would you work with the administration to try to create a more diverse group of professors? This is open to the floor. Whoever wants to speak first.
With that, I'll go for it.
Okay. I think this is a great initiative to work on with the Academic Affairs Committee, because they do, they're heavily involved with the Faculty Senate. In regards to our role in hiring faculty staff, I don't think all of you undergraduate students, but we can provide feedback to our administrators and telling them, hey, this is what the students would like to see and how we can implement than their current system. I think that's a major aspect that we have, and that's really how USG, that's how our power is stemmed from, is basically our ability to communicate with administrators and pass legislation that can make a change on campus.
Yeah, I do think this is an initiative, and I always love to see collaboration between committees. I think this is an initiative that we can work on with Academic Affairs. VP Ray Chaudhary works with the Faculty Senate on material like this. And I think something that can help us as a student body look for more diversity in our professors is, I'm going to take an example from my rowing team. Our coach is leaving at the end of the season, so we're looking for a new coach. And so the way we sent out the coaching description, or the job description for the coach, we collected student input of the whole rowing team, and we created a description of the coach that we wanted to see what specific experience they needed to have and all of that. And I feel like the same thing has been done with the presidential search committees. They're collecting student feedback on what students want to see in their next president. And I think the same can be worked through on smaller channels, where we can work with UDC and we can work with other organizations to see what student feedback looks like on what kind of faculty they want to see, and we can also use rates that we already have, statistics that we already have, to help increase the current rates of faculty that are underrepresented within our campus to match the underrepresented student population as well.
Yeah, I think what Wintana and Sharan said I totally agree with everything they said. I think crossing committees is really important here, so that we can make sure we are talking to everyone that is most equipped with the resources. I think also working with PR to get Feedback Fridays out, to ask for student feedback, to make sure that we are asking students first. And I think that in the hiring process of trying to hire a more diverse faculty, I think that not necessarily the vice president of D&I would be in this hiring process, but I think that they should have some voice. And if if it's not given by administration, then we should fight for that voice to bring the student responses and the student feedback that we have to those decisions.
All right, great. Thank you so much. So another big issue regarding remote learning is that quality internet access is not equal to all students. A lot of students don't have that high-speed internet connection that you just get at your dorm room at Case. So I hate to constantly remind people, but in the situation that and even for summer classes too, now that those are online, how would you kind of make Zoom learning more inclusive if classes remain online next semester, or just for people trying to attend summer class?
I think that is extremely important, Matt, and I'm glad you bring it up, because especially in the fact that we're all kind of in our own homes and we're all subject to different situations than what we would be subject to if we were sitting in our dorms at Case, I think working on the student activities fund, the COVID emergency fund through the finance committee, I've seen that a lot of people are struggling in this situation and that they need to be heard. And I'm glad that we have this fund, and we're really trying to make sure that anyone who needs it can apply for it with very minimal information, trying to keep their situations anonymous and allow them any accessibility to this fund. I think if the Zoom classes continue, like you said, you keep reminding people, but if we do end up going into this situation, which is entirely probable, I think that we need to make it very clear to faculty of these situations that students are going through, so that they know that these accommodations are necessary, and that the extenuating circumstances that students are experiencing are real and are need to be heard by administration. I think to try and keep this as inclusive as possible is to encourage professors and faculty to think outside of what they know in teaching and trying to accommodate students that don't have internet connection. Because I've known just from experience students and my friends that have come to me and be like, my professors require that I have internet, and a lot of the times that poses problems for people. So I think as this goes on, we'll see issues arise that I'm sure we will be, as VP.
Oh, your internet cut off.
Because, oh my gosh.
All right, you're back. You're back.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Speaking of unstable internet connection, so just I think it's important. Actually, where did I cut off? If someone could let me know. Does anyone know where I cut off?
There's a slight distortion earlier when you said from experience, but then what you said after, I know people from experience who had it, that came out clear. There was only a total cutoff like around 10 seconds ago where your video just totally cut off for me and your audio did as well. Luckily you went right back. So anyway.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad we figured it out. But the point I'm trying to make is that when these situations happen, I think that we as a D&I committee and as VP have to be really diligent in getting the administration to understand how students feel, and we need to do it efficiently because a lot of things are changing fast.
All right, great. Now, if any of you would like to speak next, or I could just call. All right.
Yeah, I'd like to add that. I don't know if you were like moving on or not, but yeah, I think an important aspect to that is ensuring that our faculty are aware of the fact that our situation is changing and not everyone has the same access to internet, stable homes. And just to be understanding of these students that might feel like they're alone in the situation, but they're not. They have the complete support of our USG, FGC, and all of our student organizations. I think we have done a great job in reaching out to students and making sure that their voices are being listened to. I think a great aspect of that was when we sent out the UDC USG survey regarding the pass, no pass options, and being able to hear personal testimonies from students and being able to gauge where our student body is and ensuring that those who may not have available resources at their disposal, that those people are being accommodated as well.
Great, thank you so much.
So definitely, when Dan and Tony, I agree with them in that also the situation is just much more than just stable internet. When you're trying to do online courses from home. But I think specifically regarding internet, something Case has done or not Case, but like network providers have done is provide free network to students of low-income households or just students all around who have been affected by the situation. I think Spectrum and Comcast have providing 2 months of free Wi-Fi. And Case has done really well in spreading the news of that resource. I don't know. I mean, I know it went through our channels for sure. And here's where it gets limited, is that students, not only domestically, but also abroad, our international students also don't have good Wi-Fi sometimes. And Comcast and Spectrum don't really cater to them. I feel like we as a student government need to recognize that we need to cater to all students and help assist our administration push to create those connections with mobile network companies that I feel like all universities will be doing over the course of the next 6 months. Is all mobile network companies will be rolling out more programs like this. More universities will be registering with programs like this to help provide for their students. And I feel like we shouldn't wait for other universities to do it. We need to push our administration to lead to do that, and also be as inclusive as possible, to be able to expand to the mobile networks partners all over the world. I feel like networks like Vodafone and all span across Europe and span across Asia and all of that. And we need to be able to partner with those kind of mobile networks to make sure that all our students across the globe are being catered to.
All right, great. Thank you all so much for those 3 great answers. I think that's a very important issue that I feel like should definitely be discussed more amongst our administration. So our last question is going to be one from an anonymous audience member. So, how do you plan to collaborate with UDC if elected as Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion? Are there any issues in the past where you've included UDC in the conversation advocacy efforts? And what would you do in the future to ensure this collaboration could be strengthened? Thank you again, anonymous audience member. Appreciate your contribution. So.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. And 100%, I absolutely love working with UDC. And that is something I would look forward to doing like regardless. I've been attending UDC events since my first day at school, and it's been an exciting time always. I've had the pleasure, thanks to Jasmine and Sasong and Fatima, to get to know more members this year when DNI and UDC have had joint committee meetings sometimes. And it's been really pleasurable to be able to build that relationship with them. And the first thing I did when I submitted my letter of intent was I called both Sasong and Fatima and I asked them what their goals for next year was and how I would be able to support them, not as a candidate, but just as another student. And I feel like we had really good conversations and we were able to build friendships just out of those conversations. And that's something I hope to build on next year. I feel like the basis of DNI UDC's relationship this year was the friendship that our VPs and presidents had already. And I don't think we can let that go to waste. I think that's something that we need to carry on building. And I feel like I am glad that I have been able to build a friendly relationship with both Sasong and Fatima. And I look forward to working with them on everything.
All right, great. Sonia?
Yeah. I think UDC collaboration is extremely important. This year, I've attended meetings for UDC's initiatives, their campus initiatives meeting, who is Fatima's the VP for their campus initiatives meeting, and I've attended their meetings this year to really try and emphasize that we have a reciprocal relationship, that it's not just that we are like, UDC, please collaborate with us. I think it's really important to make this relationship a two-way street and to make it so that way, we are helping UDC is helping us. I think it has made me so happy to see Sasong and Fatima in our DNI meetings and to go to their meetings and see how they operate. It's been absolutely amazing. I admire their work immensely. And I think continuing this is extremely important because a lot of the diversity that exists on our campus works out of UDC, which is where we should be focusing a lot of our attention in trying to help marginalized groups on campus feel that they have the equal opportunity to a better crew experience like any other student at crew. I think that I will definitely continue to attend UDC's campus initiative meeting. I will definitely extend the invitation to UDC's next president to come to our D&I meetings and continue that relationship. I also hope to extend that invitation outside of UDC, like I said, to OMA and to the LGBT Plus Center and other organizations to create almost like a roundtable of organizations that meet every so often throughout the semester so that we're all on the same page. We're all helping each other. We all know what's going on so that we act more as a cohesive unit than our individual parts.
All right, great. And now, Montana.
Yeah, I think the relationship that between USG and UDC is extremely important. I'd like to shout out Jasmine, VP Jasmine, Sasang, and Fatima for cultivating such a strong relationship, and I hope to continue to cultivate that relationship. It's also incredible to see that when we do collaborate with one another, the amount of work that we're able to accomplish. I think that can just be seen with the survey when we got nearly 50% of our student body to respond to that. So I think it's extremely important to continue that. I also want to commit to attending campus initiative meetings. I also would like to extend the invitation to future UDC execs to come to D&I, because I do feel like a lot of the initiatives that we do try to tackle, there's a lot of crossover. So if we work together, we can get done. So, yeah.
What was that last thing you said? There's a little bit of distortion on your last sentence.
Sorry?
The internet was just cutting off a bit on your last sentence, so could you just repeat that?
Oh yeah, I said if we continue to collaborate on the initiatives that tend to cross over with each committee, that will allow for a lot more initiative progress.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Now, closing statements. Do you want to start, Sana?
First and foremost, I'd like to thank you, Matt, and the Observer for hosting this debate. I think this is a great idea, and we should continue this in the future. I would be humbled to serve as the next USG VP of Diversity and Inclusion. I have had the honor of serving on both the D&I committee as well as academic affairs, and have been surrounded by passionate and dedicated people. I believe the valuable lessons learned through these committees will guide me as the future next VP of the D&I committee. Again, if I'm elected to the position, I want to focus on three main things: collaboration, integration, and community. We need to collaborate more with UDC and other marginalized student organizations. I'm also calling for better representation of our constituents in USG. The main goal of the D&I committee is to advocate for these marginalized groups, and in order to do that, we need to have them present at our meetings. We also need to better the sense of community at CASE, and if we continue to build on the path that our great VP Jasmine has led, we will achieve even more. I want to advocate for students and be a leader who empowers others to share their voices. Your vote is crucial in determining the future of our university and who you will be representing you. As a little anecdote, I like to share what my mother always says to me in Tigrinya, and she says, "If delihiyo mangandi Allah," which means if there is a will, there is a way. And I believe that the D&I committee has a will to accomplish so many different things. We will find a way to accomplish our initiatives. I would be honored to serve as the next VP of D&I, and I will lead us on the path to success and foster change. Thank you.
All right, great. Sonia, would you like to go next?
Of course. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you to the Observer. Thank you for everyone that's here on this Zoom call. I know this is different, but thank you for everyone listening to our debates, listening to why we're so passionate about these roles. I want to give a huge thanks to all of the people that made me feel like I could do this, to all the people that made me feel that I could run for VP. Thank you, Jasmine, our current VP. Thank you, Sasang. Thank you, Fatima. Thank you, every D&I representative that I have ever been able to meet. I think it's really important, and if I had the honor to be elected as your VP, I would hope that I could foster that same environment so that my reps could feel the same way that I do, that they could feel strong and confident to be in this position next year or even years to come. I think I am extremely excited if I am elected to the position to work with UDC to make these relationships last for however many years. I hope as much as it can be. I think that as VP, I want to make sure everyone feels like they're at an equal playing field. I want us to know that our diversity is a product of our equal opportunity, that we can have diverse groups in our circles, and keeping this in mind is really important. I want to strive to foster a mindset and environment of respect and consistently keeping people in the back of your mind, no matter how small they are. I want to bring every voice to the table, and I'll just hope that you'll allow me to be in this position, because I know that I can do so much good and so much change with this D&I committee, and I just hope that you'll take the chance on me to be a good VP of diversity and inclusion. Thank you so much to everyone that has helped me through this process.
Great, thank you so much. And next, Sahran.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, and thank you, the Elections Commission, for giving us this platform to share our thoughts. I also want to thank again everyone who came out to hear us, and I'm so proud to be sitting next to my fellow D&I candidates. I mean, I genuinely am. I feel like each of us are capable, not just each of us, each D&I rep is capable of leading this committee. And I hope that everyone who came here was able to leave here with more to think about. And regardless of who wins, I'm really excited about the future of this committee. Just so proud of all the work that all of us have done. I would end with, like, my caption for election has been with Mehta, you matter, but honestly, with D&I, you matter, and that's what's important.
All right, great. Thank you so much for that, everybody. Really appreciate it. Now, our last position, Chief Judicial Officer, Sarvani Nori.
Hi, thank you so much.
All right, so you want to start off opening statement?
Of course. Despite the unexpected times, I hope everyone is safe and healthy. My name is Sarvani Nori, and I'm a current first-year international studies major running for the position of Chief Judicial Officer. As a current first-year representative, I've learned the importance of our Constitution and other governing documents in making positive change throughout campus, especially during current times where we've looked to current governing documents as well as new bylaws to get us through our rather unique remote USG experience. The laws we have are a pillar of equality and justice, things I've always stood for. As potential CJO for next year, I hope to uphold the Constitution and other governing documents and be a legal voice to the USG. We are a representative body, and it's our responsibility to work in a way that follows the rules and upholds equality for all. I've also learned that engagement is key in making sure that all steps of the work that the USG does is done lawfully. As CJO, I plan on fulfilling my duties by first and foremost being engaged with GA to make sure that all steps of resolution and initiative work are done in a lawful manner. Furthermore, I specifically plan on amending standards for performance reviews to be more comprehensive and specific, taking into account a variety of different factors when assessing the work of members. In addition, I want to make specific bylaws for committees so that we can make sure that they're on track and have a protocol when approaching certain situations, such as interacting with non-USG students and other organizations. The idea of having and following laws and documents can be overwhelming, and if elected to the position of CJO, I will strive to reinforce the laws while still ensuring that they're not overwhelming and intimidating. It's evident that our past CJOs have been engaged with the General Assembly during the process of making resolutions and implementing initiatives by being with GA's side and making sure that they've received the legal input that they needed in order to move forward with their plans in a just manner. And as CJO, I hope to continue the great work of our past CJOs and give my all to the job.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Now, first question. I know one aspect of your platform is having more specific bylaws outlining how USG committees interact with non-USG organizations. Now, a lot of the people who spoke today talked about interacting with non-USG organizations. So what would those bylaws entail in terms of code of conduct or regulations?
Well, I think there should be a specific way, a specific platform through which we interact. As a member of the PR committee, I know that we have to interact with many different non-USG students and many different organizations, especially for our Feedback Fridays. And to have a more streamlined process for that, it helps a lot, either through email or to have a specific one-on-one meetings, whatever works given the specific situation. Because obviously, as USG members, we encounter various different situations depending on the different initiatives that we have. So in order to outline that specifically like the platform through which we interact with other people, I think that makes it more streamlined, and that's important because we are a representative body, we are a government, and some aspects of what we do have to be formal. So even though we might be friends with some people that we interact with for work purposes, it may not be most appropriate to, you know, have an informal way of initiating a deal for an initiative or any other project that a USG committee works on. So I think that even though I don't know the specifics for now, I do know that it's going to be more formal, requiring email, one-on-one meetings, definitely those sort of things, opposed to just informal initiations.
Gotcha. All right. Also, what are the problems with the current performance review standards, and what adjustments do you plan on making to them?
Well, for one, they're not as comprehensive, so they're not as outlined. They can be confusing as to, you know, what is expected of a member of USG. I think we could definitely outline the responsibilities more just so that it's not as overwhelming. As a member myself, sometimes, you know, I wasn't informed as much as to what the specific responsibilities are of a representative in USG. And I think if we streamline that more, it'll, you know, organize the job of a USG member and make it feel less overwhelming. Also, it could take into account more of the stresses of college life, as we've been talking about, like, you know, in our committee meetings and even in this debate. College can be stressful, especially during times like this. And we have to take into account that, you know, even though people may be USG representatives, they're also human beings and they're also college students. And we take into account what goes on in their personal life and what may be troubling them at times, schoolwork. It'll be more considerate and fair when, you know, doing performance reviews, because not everyone can give their 100% at all times, and that's just a normal thing, and our laws have to be reflective of that.
All right, great. We have an audience question from Alex Gould. He writes, "Hello from your current VP. I was wondering how you plan on balancing increased formality with the image of us possibly seeming elitist."
Well, there's always, you know, the priority of balance. I believe that balance is important in everything. Personally, as a member of the PR committee, I love the informalness and relaxed nature of committee meetings, but I'm also observant of the fact that sometimes our laxness can you know, make us lag behind and lose our focus and productivity. We can go back and forth sometimes. We can go completely off topic. And although that's only healthy, sometimes we need to get back on track, especially when we have pressing issues we need to address. We are representing the entire student body, so our responsibility is very, very important. It's all about striking a balance at the end of the day. The laws, I envision these bylaws not to be super strict, but also not to be super lax, just so that there's a bit of an organization in how we progress through committee meetings. So definitely we want to be accessible to the people that we represent, but we also have to do our job and make sure we're on track. So my bylaws, I envision them not to be too strict, but they also give priority to responsibility and getting the job done.
All right, great. So are there any changes that you think need to be made to the existing USG Constitution?
For now, based on what I've reviewed, the Constitution, everything is outlined, but I think it can be more specific, especially when considering the protocol for impeachment and recalling members. I've read through those parts, and frankly, I've been a little bit confused about the process. I think they need to be more specific because, after all, it is a constitution and it should be thorough. The current constitution does a great job of outlining the basic protocol for how things work, but the specifics, we can go into that a little bit more just so that it's not confusing for incoming members of USG and current members of USG, and also the student body who has a say in who the initiatives that we potentially pass, and the the impeachment of members and the recall of members. And they do a lot of work with petitions. So they're involved in that too, and we have to be considerate of that. We can sometimes be stuck in the fact that, you know, we're in the loop, but we also have to be considerate of the idea that not everyone is in our circle and they may not understand everything in the Constitution as we do. So being more specific is definitely key in amending the Constitution.
All right, great. Thank you so much. So we have an anonymous audience question. How do you plan on continuing the existing work that is currently being done on governing documents? Or are you utilizing or continuing the existing work on government documents in terms of like having a transition? I'm guessing it's like, you know, things that may not be completed on the Constitution and like finishing them out.
Well, that's definitely a work in progress. I hope to work with my exec members and the judicial board to do that. It's definitely a collaborative process and it's ongoing. In terms of continuing the work that our current CJO has been doing, I hope to do it with the same amount of energy and enthusiasm and work that, you know, Joey has been doing this year. And the key is really engagement. I've seen a lot of engagement from Joey's end this year, and I can only hope that I can strive for that myself. That will be my key priority, because making sure that initiatives and resolutions are being are progressing in a lawful manner throughout every step of the way, that all relies on engagement from the CJO. So I hope to give my all for that and prioritize my job as CJO over everything else. I'll try to balance that with everything that I do as a student that's not part of USG, and I strive to be dedicated in my job.
Great. I guess one question that I have too, especially because some of your platform requires bylaws that impact committee meetings to make them more productive. How do you plan on enforcing these new regulations? Sorry if regulations isn't the right term, but.
Definitely first they should be in the process of being drafted and outlined, and then familiarized with the exec board. So VPs of the different committees will definitely be informed of this in the exec meetings, and they will be asked to you know, comply by these rules. And we will have reviews with our exec meetings, which are weekly. I hope to check in with VPs personally to make sure that these bylaws are working and that they're being enforced, and that you know, there's more productivity and there's a more streamlined process to committee meetings. It is a lot of the responsibility after the bylaws that you know, CJO and the J board creates. After the creation process is done, it is a huge responsibility of the VPs, because they are essentially the spearheads of the committee meetings themselves. So that responsibility lies a lot on the VPs, I have to say.
All right, great. And thank you so much. So one last question from non-anonymous audience member, and then closing statement. So how will you work to involve the student body in the reforming process of USG's governing documents?
Well, thank you for the question. First of all the amendments and changes to bylaws, before they get passed, they have to be run by GA. So in our GA meetings, we will have our General Assembly vote on these things. And we make sure that in a lawful manner, these changes are being passed and implemented with the consensus of the General Assembly. So they'll definitely be informed of these changes in GA, and the decision whether we implement these changes is dependent on their vote. So that is the primary way through which the GA is informed of these changes and is involved in changes in legislation.
Okay, great. Now, do you have a closing statement or anything else you'd like to say?
Yes, I do. The work that the USG does is highly guided by the Constitution and governing documents, and it's the job of the CJO to be a legal voice for USG and to make sure the work is done in a lawful manner. It's also the job of the CJO to amend legal documents if necessary so that it will best suit USG's goal of achieving transparency, which is a main goal of USG, just based on what I have learned throughout my first year. If elected to CJO next year, I'll strive to act with the same engagement and dedication that our past CJOs have worked with. More specifically, I hope to make specific committee bylaws and aid an organization more clearly outline the responsibility of members, to be more considerate of stressful circumstances, because mental health is always a priority, whether it be in the initiatives towards the student body or laws like what the CJO amends and implements in terms of members of the USG. Overall, I know that the idea of complying by legal documents can be a bit overwhelming, and I hope to make the constitutions and governing documents less intimidating to members. Thank you for the opportunity to share my platform and express my thoughts to the student body, and just wanted to say have a great night, everyone. Stay safe. We've hit unprecedented times and it can be really scary, but I just hope everyone is safe and healthy. We're going to get through this together.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Again, thank you all for coming and attending and speaking about your platforms. And also thank you to the audience members who contributed questions and really added, I think that always adds a lot to good audience stuff. So it's not just, me and the observer's perspective in here.